to kind of
Oh,
restart.
here we go. Yeah. I don't know what to call it. Technical difficulties. I think there is a name for when you have plans and you end up with some kind of horrific sickness that I believe the Britisher originated. I think that something germinated, something very wicked and evil germinated in his very soul, and it was manifest into some kind of horrific flu that he has now spread throughout the world, and it has come to roost at my house here. And so at the moment, I'm not even gonna try to make it a scale of 1 to 10 because I don't think that I would even get to the scale. I'm feeling really horrible. But somebody said at one time or another, the show must go on. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna do my usual big long intro. I'm just gonna say that I'm so stoked today. We have the academic agent on with us, and I think everybody knows Staggerson Jagz. He's making his debut as a interim member of the Madcap crew. Everybody obviously knows the Britisher. I'm your ever-loving blue-eyed ogre, and we're going to take a little different step today. It looks like Mr. Presler must have gotten swamped, so we're going to have him on another Monday if he doesn't make it today, but I haven't heard from him up until now. So the things that we kind of had planned to talk about in the Trump universe, we may get to some of those things and some American stuff, but we have two really good British folks here, so we'll let the colonies be off to the side, and I'm just going to turn it right over to my co-host, the Britisher, and see what he's got to get us into.
Oh, good evening, everybody. As the ogre points out, I seem to have kind of spread some sort of 21st century plague that by now has reached the colonies. So the ogre is feeling a little worse for wear, it appears. As you can hear in my voice, it still hasn't quite left me after about 3 weeks.
Oh, mercy.
So I'm just passing this on so that the ogre knows what joys he has to look forward to.
Oh, mercy's sake.
So today, aside from Staggerson Jagz, who we've had on before, we have got the academic agent, whom I, just to name drop yet further, whom I met on Sargon's live stream when the general election was on.
Yes, I remember that awful evening. it was probably not the best circumstances to meet under, right? Because I was basically in agony that evening. It was just the worst of all worlds, if you remember.
And you did have 1,000 times more people watching you, so there's that less pressure on this show.
That's right. Yeah.
If you remember, there again, I was spreading the plague. Because if you recall, that particular live stream began with Sargon asking everybody what their worst case scenario would be. And I pointed out the worst case scenario would be a hung parliament where nobody would be in a position to do anything. So yes, we can blame me. Yes. So so it's at that time, on having spoken to you and then having seen you a few times on Twitter, it was I kind of pointed out to the ogre that it might be a good idea to have you on one day, because yes, you do seem to know your politics, don't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, you could say that it's one of my special areas of interest. Yeah, and I mean, in recent, speaking of Sargon, if people like in recent times, Sargon and I buddied up to take on some communists in a debate. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that was something of an experience. So I'm actually happy to be talking about normal politics again, not not why Stalin's Russia wasn't. I've met a lot of how can I put this, Stalin apologists in the past few weeks. So I'm just happy to be talking about normal issues again.
Yeah, I was trying to get in on that ding dong with you, but to be honest, I think there was enough people in there shouting, and I felt like I was a fifth wheel, but I was paying attention to that when you were having your ding dong with the commies.
Yeah, God. Well, thank God it's over.
Was that a live stream itself, or was that just a ding dong that you were having on Twitter?
That was a live stream.
So you were actually live talking to communists who were trying to convert you into the new Stalinism.
It was a 3-on-3 debate, which had, I think there were about 4,000 people watching it live. If you want to talk about scary-looking streams, there was that one was just whizzing by. You know, it was just.
It's like a kind of merry-go-round. You can't possibly read the comments; they just are a blur as they go past. Yes.
Yeah. But
yeah. Yeah, no, so basically you've had your fair, because I've also seen that you've had your fair share of ding-dongs with sort of quite hard left people on Twitter.
I mean, yeah, it's all a spillover of that. I seem to have become like a kind of hate figure for hardcore communists, which is probably, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Oh, you should be honored. You should be honored to have it. And I was, by the way, I didn't see the stream. I was referring to, I just seen, you were basically getting dogpiled on by, I'd have to look, and I'm not going to sit up right now at the names, but you were getting dogpiled on Twitter by some socialists and some communists. It was obvious what they were. You handled yourself very well, I've got to tell you.
Well, geez.
Well, yes, I mean, I think we can sort of say that you are not necessarily, you know, Jeremy Corbyn's greatest fan. I mean, I think that's sort of fair to say, isn't it? That you may be rather of a different political persuasion.
That's right. I mean, I'm not like a hardcore Tory or member of the Conservative Party or anything like that. In fact, I've only ever voted for the Tory Party once, and that was in this past election. It's just that I have a deep and abiding dislike of leftism of all sorts, socialism being one of them, the SJWs being another variety, and I mean, my basic thinking at the moment is that they're all varieties of the same disease, as it were. It might come out as socialism, it might come out as kind of social justice advocacy, but it's all basically what Thomas Sowell calls the vision of the anointed, you know, people who think they know better than everyone else and want to make everyone else conform to their moral vision through political power. So that's my basic position at the moment, which is, in the current climate, made me a de facto supporter of the Conservative Party, even though I've never been one before in my life.
So when you, you know, when you're sort of talking of the Labour Party, I mean, right now they seem to have really shunted towards the left, because when we look at kind of the Blairites and whatever who are in Labour, who basically were heavily opposed to Corbyn, I mean, they have now all been silenced, because now they have come, officially at least, to the realization that Jeremy Corbyn is the second coming, because he has done so well. So now it kind of seems as if there isn't even any, at least not openly, any opposition toward him in the Labour Party. So it really now seems to be going full on socialist, doesn't it?
I mean, it's very scary. I mean, if I was an old Blairite Labour MP, it must be very scary times, because they can't speak out. It's clear that Corbyn has taken the election result as being some sort of how can I put it, ratification of his platform. Like he feels like he's got a mandate now and that he's untouchable. If you look at what he's actually done within the Labour Party, he's effectively taken it hostage, you know, filled out its rank and file with hardcore Momentum members, and then basically bullied, cajoled, really behind the scenes, not a very pleasant piece of work, the Corbyn operation.
Yes, I mean, just, you know, for viewers here, there have been reports of certain MPs perhaps getting an odd brick through their office window if they were too vociferously opposed to Jeremy Corbyn and such like. So these are people who, if necessary, can get quite nasty.
Boy, that's a thread. I mean, and you know, look, Stag, don't feel too bad, because I think until we get to the SJW thing, you and I might just be sitting here going, isn't it interesting? But now I see that it is definitely, so that's not unique to the United States of America, is what I want to get to very quickly. That that it seems to be the lefties that violence is definitely an option.
Oh, yes. I mean, we're in by all means necessary territory, aren't we, Mr. Agent?
Yvette Ferrarca territory, yeah.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, I don't want to get off on a tangent too quickly, but there's a very interesting parallel, I think, between the Corbynistas and the Tea Party, even though they're coming from the different, like the way the Tea Party took the Republican Party kind of, I don't want to say hostage, but they've basically had a bit of a takeover there. It's a similar sort of thing where the old GOP and the Trump and the Trump faction are not necessarily the same, but now the Trump faction has kind of hegemony within the or that they're vying for power in the party. It's not a million miles away from a similar sort of thing that's happening here. Or yeah, I don't know if you have any comments about that.
Well, except of course here in Britain with Corbyn, I mean, it was the ultimate irony, wasn't it? Because he didn't actually even have the nominations. Some people lent him the votes to have the nominations to stand for the leadership of the Labour Party, even though they weren't supporting him.
Lent him the votes. Hey, please explain that to Stag and I don't know what do you mean by that?
You see, in the Labour Party, the left was effectively so marginalised that they wouldn't even have been able to put up a candidate to stand for election, because you need a certain number, you need a minimum number of MPs to back you as leader so that you can even stand for the leadership. And he didn't have the necessary number because basically all the MPs just thought, he's just some kind of contrarian, moron, really. So he just simply couldn't get the numbers. But because they felt this will look bad in the press, that basically nobody from the left wing of the Labour Party can even get a mandate to be a candidate. What we will do is, for appearance's sake, we will kind of find a few MPs to lend him their votes so that he can at least stand as a candidate. Like that, we will look more diverse and inclusive and all those kind of things. The sort of verbal spiel.
But I'm still not. Do you understand what he's saying, Stag, by lend votes? I don't get it.
That's the part I don't get either. What does it mean to lend a vote?
They basically voted for him, even though actually their preference would have been for a different candidate.
Oh, okay. So it's not like shady. It's not like it's not a shady thing as in like a voter fraud kind of deal.
But basically he would never have had the nominations necessary to become to even become a candidate for the leadership had it not been for that measure. And that measure was entirely taken purely for appearance's sake.
Yeah. And he's relied on that, people underestimating him thing over and over again. I mean, look at what happened in the election. Looking back, you can see that it was the fact that nobody was taking the Labour Party seriously, or nobody was taking Corbyn seriously as a candidate. Like that led to him having, or how can I put this? Nobody even bothered to question his pricing on all sorts of different policies because nobody thought he had a hope of getting in. So there was no scrutiny on any of the policies. And also people voted for him thinking, well, he's not going to get in anyway. So and that's how you end up with a hung parliament
against the government. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it was the hubris of Theresa May, who thought she had already won. And the reason she thought she had already won is because she saw that Jeremy Corbyn was such an extremely weak candidate.
But the reason I make the parallel over with Trump is that my understanding of the Trump thing was similar in that nobody took him seriously when there were 16 different Republican candidates. He was just kind of in there as a. Do you know what I mean? It was. You can see a kind of similar trajectory, even though it's coming from the
and you can
wings.
also see that he, just as Trump is not really of the establishment of the party and doesn't really have the support of the establishment of the party, so too does Corbyn not really have the support of the establishment of the party, but he has a kind of grassroots support at the base. which again is a parallel with Donald Trump.
Absolutely right. I guess where there may be a big difference is that I'm not convinced that the Corbyn base is very big at all. It just so happens like that flock of, I don't know, 200, 300,000 people in Momentum is quite a small number of people in the overall scheme of things in a country of 65 million.
Well, yes, the problem is that the parties are actually fairly small constructs. So if you suddenly throw 300,000 people into one of these parties, they are suddenly sufficient in number to dominate it, but they actually are completely unrepresentative compared to the 65 million people of the overall country.
So that's not a joke? You think that he may only have 200,000 supporters in the whole of the country?
Well,
no, but sort of really fired up.
We can probably get into this, but I think the big difference between Corbyn and Trump is that Trump's populism seems real to me. I think that Trump's base is millions and millions. I do think he's talking to the genuine concerns of at least half of America, whereas I genuinely think that Corbyn secretly is speaking only to the concerns of that 200 or 300,000 people, and is simply either hoodwinking everyone else or everyone else isn't really supporting him. And this is something I wanted to get into with you, Britisher, in the next few minutes, because I've got a few theories about the Corbyn mania, or whatever you call it, that's been running over the summer here.
Hey, you take it wherever you want to, Agent. This is your show. You're a guest of honor. We like to consider you the belle of the ball. So wherever you want to go, you just take it there. We'll follow you.
Well, something unusual has happened in the past few weeks or months in British politics, which is that Jeremy Corbyn has gone from being a fringe outsider joke candidate to being, how can I put it, a kind of a pin-up for Guardian readers and festival goers, and your general intelligentsia in Britain have kind of like taken Corbyn up as a poster boy. There's even he's got a nickname. Have you heard this? The absolute boy. Have you heard?
No, I've not heard that one. No, that one hasn't reached me yet. No.
Apparently, his supporters are now calling him the absolute boy. And he appeared at Glastonbury, where they sung this song, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn."
Yes, I did see the great cringe at Glastonbury. I mean, even Glastonbury was so cringed out that now next year they're going to take time out and are not going to have it, aren't they? So that was cringe-inducing to see Jeremy Corbyn hold a political speech at a music festival. I mean, this is the equivalent, imagine it, of kind of Woodstock, and then suddenly a politician arrives and starts holding a speech, and they all cheer him as though he's Jimi Hendrix. So it really was. It was painful to watch.
So I do not believe that millions and millions of people have suddenly, in Britain, have suddenly, like, how can I, like, pushed to the hard left as Jeremy Corbyn. Like, Jeremy Corbyn's a proper socialist. He's not just he's not just kind of a soft left Keynesian second coming of Clement Attlee or anything like that. He is a proper, like, he's from the Marxist wing of the Labour Party. The Chancellor, the Shadow Chancellor, is a guy called John McDonnell, a proper Marxist. His campaign manager is someone who's quoted as having apologized for Stalin. Like, he's basically the left version of
for Uncle Joseph.
It's the left version of basically, Hitler. Yeah, he may have done some bad things, but at least he made the trains run on time. It's the kind of left version of that. Yeah, you've got to give it to Stalin, though. He did industrialize the USSR in however it lot. It's basically that kind of stuff. And he would have also been. There's a guy called George Galloway, who you may have heard of, who's a kind of ally of. So this is the kind of it's the fringe of the Labour Party, the kind of the old trots essentially, and I don't believe that millions of people have suddenly like flipped their politics to be hard leftists. I actually think that we have a version of identity politics going on with like what they see Corbyn as representing, and basically it's that they're seeing in Corbyn a kind of a man who represents their values, whatever it is, you know, and it's basically the absolute boy is a projection of whatever they hope to see. So let's pretend, for example, that there's a politically correct position. Take the Doctor Who thing that happened last week. Doctor Who is now a woman, and so the correct position, if you're in that kind of intelligentsia, is of course we are for that. That's a good thing. Okay. Their projection is that Corbyn would also, because he's the absolute boy, would also support that position. Or the BBC gender pay gap. Of course, Corbyn is going to be right on board with that because it's a right-on position. Do you know what I mean? And that's basically what Corbyn seems to have come to represent to those.
So absolute
people.
boy isn't derogatory. That's supposed to be a compliment.
That's a compliment, yeah.
Okay, because I don't know about Staggerson, but every time I heard you say that, I was kind of laughing up my sleeve because I thought it was a mockery of him. That just sounds so funny. Absolute boy.
I think it is one of those perhaps sort of Britisherisms whereby I think in the 51st state they mentioned this, and that is that the Americans can sometimes grow quite confused by some of the language we use. So if the English say something like bollocks, that is bad.
Well, I know what.
But if they say that's the dog's bollocks, that is very good.
Oh, I never heard the dog's bollocks.
Precisely.
Like
so this is one of
knees.
those things that can be quite confusing in terms of language. So the absolute boy is more than likely another one of those plays where.
Well, and Stag and I will try to keep up on the new vernacular here that we're learning, but I'm not supposed to be going off on any tangents. So I will leave that to the academic agent.
Just try typing it into your Twitter search bar. Just absolute boy and see what comes up. And you'll see.
If you could see me right now, I'm reclined on my couch and I'm not going to get up. I'll try not to.
Try calling somebody that in America. Try that in America. Call somebody an absolute boy and see what kind of a response you get.
That's what I was thinking.
Over here, you can call someone the absolute boy and mean something good. Over there, it needs to at least be the God Emperor, doesn't it? I mean,
no, over here, the absolute boy would get you poked in the nose. I mean, that would be like calling somebody a bitch or a sissy, whatever.
So anyway, what I was coming down to is
thank you.
I don't believe this whole kind of cultural move towards supporting Corbyn is anything to do with his politics. It's more to do with he makes people feel good about themselves. You know, just like it's almost like the anti-Trump phenomenon not really being about politics, but being about like feeling good about yourself that you went on the science march or the women's march or whatever, because it represents who you are. I think supporting Corbyn is now like, this represents who I am. Corbyn is obviously for LGBT. He's obviously for, gender pay balance or whatever. He's obviously for all of the things that I consider to be right. Corbyn is for them.
Is he perhaps also a bit edgy because he's seen as being anti-establishment?
And there's that he's there's that sense that he's someone that the establishment doesn't like, especially like the traditional right-wing press in this country, who did everything let's face it, they did everything they could to discredit him. And the more they did that, the more people rallied to him, which is again a really interesting. I mean, genuinely, I think Corbyn started playing by the Trump playbook. Towards the end of the campaign.
Something did happen during the campaign. I mean, you may recall I said that during the the Sargon stream, that his speeches got better. Mm-hmm. But basically, it almost seemed as if somewhere along the line, rather than being sort of that kind of sort of gruff, outsider, he suddenly started accepting advice and started accepting people writing his speeches for him. And somehow, suddenly the PR started kicking in. And this is just too successful in a way for Corbyn, to just having grown on his midden. Clearly, there are some people at work here who are kind of carefully crafting an image for him. But in order for that to have been the case, they first needed to get him to accept it.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. He definitely grew into that campaign. I actually wonder whether the shyness started to go up, because another curiously British thing, isn't it, is that whenever I bumped into a colleague at work, and something that he said was really interesting to me. He said, yes, I had my 2 minutes of my 2 weeks of Corbyn mania before reality kicked in again. So it's like it's almost like he even realized that, you know, he just let himself go there for a couple of weeks, and now he's back to normal again.
He was wearing the Che Guevara t-shirt for 2 weeks, but then eventually he kind of began to see sense.
That's, yeah, but there is also that sense of, like, how can I put this? The British do not like someone who's, I guess, full of themselves or show off. Would you still agree with that, Britisher? That is if there's anything that's not British, it is that, like, we don't like a braggart.
Yeah.
Or
Precisely,
I actually think that the way Corbyn carried himself after the election, as if he was basically full of hubris and full of, I guess, bonhomie or whatever you'd call it.
At the festival, the name of which I've suddenly forgotten, Glastonbury. When he was there, he actually spoke to the farmer. You know, that farmer who by now is a multimillionaire who runs Glastonbury on his fields. He afterwards said to the press that Corbyn had said to him, "Give it 6 months, and I'm going to be prime minister."
Wow.
So yes, it's basically hubris has definitely kicked in there too. It has not just reached Theresa May.
What's fascinating with me is that, that's exactly what led Theresa May to lose. It's also what led David Cameron to lose the Brexit. Like, yes, there were lots of reasons to be against remaining, but I honestly think that the hubris of the Remain campaign counted against them. I think the hubris of Hillary's campaign counted against her, and nobody seems to be learning the lesson.
What hubris about Hillary? You know, the best candidate, the best qualified candidate that the United States of America has ever had.
Ever seen.
Know what possible hubris you could be talking about, Mr. Agent?
Yeah. And I kind of want to press you, academic agent, if I may. Will you share with us which way you voted on the Brexit?
Yes, I will, and this is something that is actually something at odds with a lot of my followers and subscribers and so on. I voted Remain, which I know is not popular in these circles, but I voted Remain for possibly the worst, most selfish reasons possible, which is that I had a flat on the market for sale. I wanted it to sell for as much as possible, and I thought a Remain result would help that. I also recently just bought a property here for 500 grand, and I want to protect. And all the signs were telling me that Brexit result would hurt property prices. Oh. So I mean, and that's basically the only reasons that I voted for Remain.
Well, can you imagine the comments we are now going to get?
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Let them comment how they want, but you're in good company. The Britisher voted that way. And just very quickly,
got 2 people on with distinct British accents who have both voted to Remain.
and just really quickly before I let y'all go again, academic agent, this is our lovely co-host, also Amanda Wolfchild. Amanda Wolfchild, this is the academic agent. So glad you could make it tonight, Ma.
Hi. Yeah, I'm always late.
Pleased to meet you, Amanda.
All right, so crack on, mates. I'm sorry to interrupt like that.
Yeah, so the Corbyn thing, I'm convinced that the reason that he did so well in the election was because millions of people were just turned off by Theresa May She had a chance of getting lots of people who had never voted Tory before. And I always use this is going to sound odd, but like my mother as a barometer for these things. Like my mother correctly predicted both Brexit and Trump. Okay. She was also pro Brexit, and she is, or was at least, pro Trump. And that is because I think she's a very good barometer for like what normal working class people are thinking. And she's generally got a track record of being right on these things. And when Theresa May came out with the manifesto, and she basically said, "I knew it. The Tories are back up to their old trick." Like it's a very big emotional barrier for people in places like Wales or the North to vote, to even consider voting Tory. Okay, it goes against like their parents and their grandparents and ingrained traditions and so on. It's a huge psychological thing to do. So when Theresa May came out with that manifesto and basically said, "Screw the old people, screw the foxes, screw the," when she came out with that, it was basically just confirming everybody's worst fears about the Tories. And Corbyn would have picked up millions of de facto votes just from that. So it's almost like it's very difficult to judge what like the level of true support that he's got, because I mean, let's face it, we were between a rock and a hard place with that election. I mean, you could also see it the other way. Like I think Theresa May got 43% of the popular vote. That's not a kind of like my vote for her was not a vote for her manifesto. It's not a mandate from me to her to say, "Do whatever you want. I believe in Theresa May's vision for the country." It's basically between that and voting for, this second coming of Stalin. So I just don't know. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like a lot of people were faced with two very stark choices.
It was the lesser of two evils, really, wasn't it?
Trust us, we understand exactly what you're saying. We just had Trump versus Hillary. I mean, come on. The fuck are we gonna do?
So, I guess one of the questions you asked me in this outline, Britisher, is like, ideally, what would I see as constructive opposition? Like, in my ideal world, what would the Labour Party look like?
At the moment, we basically don't really seem to have a constructive opposition, don't we? Because now we've just basically got people reciting things that, strictly speaking, are of yesteryear. I mean, sort of pre-1990, shades of socialist revision, whereby you sort of think, well, hang on a moment, that will lead us nowhere. So what I was just sort of wondering is, what would you actually see as a useful opposition to be in the country? Given our current government, I'm not talking of a particular party or whatever, but if you were king for a day and you could just basically decide what the Labour Party should actually stand for and should seek to achieve, what would it actually be that you would seek in an opposition these days?
Well, this will be very unpopular with some people, but I would just like to see Tony Blair, but not Blair, obviously, but just like another, I guess, Blair, but not Blair. Somebody with the
honest one.
So somebody with essentially the political position of Tony Blair and the skills of Tony Blair, only not him, because he's obviously he's damaged beyond. He's basically toxic as a brand now, so it can't be him himself. But I see absolutely no reason to believe that the neoliberal consensus is destroyed. Like everybody looked at 2016 and they had the takeaway that, oh yeah, we've had essentially 30 years of unbroken neoliberalism, and now that continuity is destroyed. Okay, I actually do not draw that lesson. How can I put this? Yeah, there are a few things that went wrong on immigration. There are a few areas that haven't been doing so well, like the Rust Belt or up north, or places in Wales and so on. But that's no reason to completely abandon political wisdom. You know, there have been lots and lots of politicians who have shown exactly how you win an election in this country. Tony Blair did it 3 times in a row. People forget that he won, what, at least 2 elections after Iraq. 2005, he won after Iraq.
Yeah, but if I can just interrupt you there, the reason he won was once again due to that sort of conundrum of the populace only being given the lesser of 2 evils to elect. And if you looked at the candidates against whom he was standing, the populace didn't have any choice other than to vote for him.
Who was that? Was it Michael Howard?
Michael Howard. I'm just trying to think of the leaders. First it was Don Major at the very end of that Tory government, which was really falling apart.
That's right.
Then they had what was he called? William Hague. Then they had Ian Duncan Smith, and then they had Michael Howard. You know, and you just look at that and you say, as a selection, none of that was in any way palatable to the public.
I have to mention this. Ian Duncan Smith gave me my favorite political moment in history, which is when
the Quiet Man.
He gave that speech about the quiet man and it tanked, and then he did the follow-up speech. The quiet man is turning up the volume.
Yes, you must forgive us here. He was, you know, Ian Duncan Smith was basically a kind of political non-entity who ran the Conservative Party for a while whilst Tony Blair was Prime Minister. And because he basically had absolutely no razzmatazz about him, at some point his speechwriters obviously decided, oh, we'll try and make that a virtue and we'll try and sell him as the quiet man. So he kind of, in one of his speeches, he sort of said something like, don't underestimate the determination of a quiet man. And that was supposed to be the soundbite, if you know what I mean. And of course, it completely tanked. It made him look completely ridiculous. It was ridiculed all around the country in every single outlet of the press. So then the next party political conference, he came out with the immortal line, the quiet man is turning up the volume, trying to sound determined. And it was just one of those moments where you were just banging your head on the table plate going, please make it stop.
Jeb Bush did the exact same thing during our election.
That's embarrassing.
So I guess all I wanted to say was that all I'm trying to say is that there's the political class in this country have basically decided among themselves that they were going to take. So if you look at politics since Thatcher, okay, so Thatcher had to have a more free market platform because the socialists basically had tanked the economy in the 70s. You know, the winter of discontent in 1978 was a real thing. I made a video about this called "Why the British Will Never Vote for Socialism Again," which is looking less and less a good prediction as time goes on. But in there, I basically lay out exactly why Britain was on its arse in the 1970s. It's because the Labour government after the war nationalised whole swathes of industry. Like, you know, you had the government running coal mines and factories, and you had basically millions of people being kept in jobs in industries that were failing, being bankrolled by the government because they were following this kind of Keynesian economic vision where people having jobs and being able to buy things was seen as more important than running, I guess, an efficient economy.
Full employment was the chief goal, wasn't it? And then
that's right.
Under Thatcher, it changed from full employment to keeping inflation under control.
That's right.
That was really the change of the economic model, really.
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, in broad terms, you get a flip from John Maynard Keynes to Milton Friedman's, I guess, economic vision. And in America, they had a very similar thing. Like in America, people forget that.
We're not that different.
In America, FDR's New Deal vision was broadly dominant up until Jimmy Carter, and then, of course, Ronald Reagan was the American version of, Thatcher and Reagan basically went hand in hand. They came in at the same time, and both made big efforts to transform the economic running of those. And
they both regarded each other as political allies.
That's right, and you get a parallel of the same sorts of things happening. Now, what people don't understand, people who have no understanding of, I say no understanding, people have a habit of seeing Thatcher and Reagan come in, and then seeing the decline of industry in those in the Rust Belt and in places like Wales and up north in this country, and drawing the conclusion, these guys came in and they basically killed industry, and it's all the fault of the free marketeers that this happened. What they neglect to mention is that the big government kind of Keynesian vision of things had brought both economies basically like slowly grinding to a halt. You can't have an economy based on artificially keeping people in jobs. You can't have, I mean, you had in both countries ridiculous things where the government was basically subsidizing factories or mines or whatever it is, or farms. Taxpayers were paying to produce steel to sell to some other country at a loss. You had people working in factories at a loss you cannot run an economy that way. It leads to you losing money, and eventually the money runs out.
Well, if I remember rightly, in order to give an example of that, I mean, everybody will have heard of the Mini, the Mini motor car that was built in the 60s and was a complete icon of British design. No Mini was ever produced that made any money. They were actually building it at a loss.
Yeah.
Well, also,
and now you can just imagine how many of those they built and sold worldwide. And with every single model they rolled off the production line, they lost more money.
that's why they kind of changed it up a little here with sugar. Instead, we grow our own sugar, and that's it. That's all we're allowed. We can't buy sugar from other places, so there's no real they have a monopoly on it. They control the price of sugar, and people pay it. That's how they, instead of doing it at a loss, they just force us, the people, to pay extra for stuff we could get cheaper.
I mean, it's protectionism. And Milton Friedman's argument back in the 70s and the early 80s was always, now hold on, why should everyday Americans, or why should everyday British people, why should normal consumers pay the price because companies can't compete in market conditions? And the reason that a company like General Motors or Ford's couldn't compete anymore is because if you have high regulation, high union power, minimum wage, all of these things add costs to companies. And it means that if a company over in Japan is able to get a product out for cheaper, they can't compete with them.
And it also takes away the employees' rights, because you have to go take a job because you have to get minimum wage. It doesn't matter where you work, you're going to get minimum wage, rather than being able to pick what company you want to work for and what job you want to strive for based on the benefits they choose to offer.
Right. Absolutely. And then what happens is you make it expensive enough for the employer. I mean, I popped into McDonald's earlier, and they've replaced the entirety of the tills with machines now. There aren't any tills in McDonald's anymore. You just go and tap into that machine like I want a Big Mac.
That is part of the sort of computerization and AI and robotics coming in that is going to absolutely decimate jobs in the next 20 years or so.
Right, but what I'm saying is you levy a minimum wage on companies like that who rely on workers who are 16, 17, 18. And of course, it's going to accelerate that process, and it ends up with fewer people having jobs, not more. Anyway,
go on.
Where was I going with it? Okay, so basically, that vision of the world, that 70s kind of version of socialism, had to go. Okay, and it led to this rather harsh version of the free market with Thatcher and Reagan, where they were socially conservative, and economically liberal, we could say. Now, over time, this basically morphed into the left's version of this, which was Tony Blair and, of course, Bill Clinton, the third way, which was economically liberal and socially liberal. So now you have, I guess, a blank. You know, Bill Clinton was probably like the most free market president that America has had in the late like after the Second World War, which may surprise some people.
But would you really say that both Bill Clinton and Tony Blair were social liberals?
Well, okay, I'll put it a different way. To the extent that I can't see a Tony Blair openly standing against gay marriage, for example.
True, but if we take the prison populations under both Bill Clinton and Tony Blair exploded.
Right. Okay. So I see what you're saying there. So
Bill was just a Hillary puppet anyway. Come on.
So like, okay, if you take crime, like the old-fashioned kind of liberal position on crime under somebody like Lyndon B. Johnson would be, you know, the reason that we have criminals is because people come from like broken homes, and we need to spend more time rehabilitating criminals than punishing them. This is the important thing, and that was behind like all of LBJ's crime reforms, and it led to the massive backlash of Nixon, the law and order, and you know, let's crack down on crime. So there you can see a very obvious like old-fashioned left and old-fashioned right reaction. Tony Blair's whole thing was, look, I'm not an ideologue. I am a pragmatist when it comes to this, and I'm tough on crime, but I'm also tough on the causes of crime. So he was playing at once to the LBJs and to the Nixons, and won over both sets of people. Then you get David Cameron, who's basically the same again. In America, things go a bit weird then, because you have the neocons and Obama, like, but basically they had their kind of third way president who was Bill Clinton. And to my way of seeing, that is the way to win, like for right or for wrong, that seems to me the proven way to win elections. And I do not understand why now in 2016 people suddenly think that conventional wisdom has changed. And when I look at the French election and Macron, who basically was Tony Blair again, I still think it's basically the way to win elections. It's just that we don't have anybody running on that platform with a requisite charisma in 2017.
Yeah, my cousin has a theory. Put the two candidates next to each other. Whichever one is more attractive, that's the one that's going to win.
Well, I mean, as such, really, when you look at it, if you have a right of centre party and you have a left of centre party standing against each other, then you basically need a candidate who is on the left of the right of centre party, and you need a candidate who is on the right of the left of centre party. So you need centrists who can kind of pull their own party towards the middle, because you need to have some sort of way in appealing towards kind of the other side and the center. If you are only basically talking to your base, if you're only talking to the people on the left of center party, then you are in a way turned away from the rest of the people. You are just basically talking. You're talking to the galleries. The rest of the country isn't listening. So I think that's what you mean. It's kind of a miracle that here is Corbyn on the really far outer left reaches of his party, talking to a cabal of left-wingers who seems to have joined his party in massive numbers, but ignoring the absolute rest of the nation. Miraculous reason he has gone up in the polls.
Yeah, and what happens is if you basically take away the choice of the centrist and you only have basically the far extremes, or in this case you have a far left extreme up against somebody who nobody ever really wanted, who wanted Theresa May. Theresa May basically stumbled into the job when all of her colleagues.
Well, Boris Johnson was stabbed in the back by Michael Gove at the last moment, and that allowed her to get in.
Well,
Right.
she's the one that refused to wear the headscarf, right? I liked that. That was a badass move.
As I say, talking of the French, when you talk of Emmanuel Macron coming to power, yes, he romped to power with the 2/3 majority, but when it actually came to the first round, so when you could actually see where people's real loyalties lay, when it wasn't just a matter of I'm voting for the lesser of two evils, then he was only something like, was it 4% ahead of Le Pen? And she wasn't even a full percentage point ahead of, I forget his name, the conservative. And Mélenchon, who was the far left candidate, he was only another percentage point behind that. So they were really close up to each other.
Yeah.
So, you know, in that regard, Macron is getting a bit better press than he perhaps deserves, because he only, in a way, swept to power in the actual second round, when all the, you know, the supporters of all the other candidates didn't really have any other choice other than Le Pen or Macron, and we all know why they didn't go for Le Pen, because they were afraid of the National Front.
She's a Nazi.
Precisely, because Jean-Marie Le Pen, you know, if you look at his history and you look at the history of that party, you understand why the French all went, no, thank you.
Well, British, you know, most people disagree with me on this. I think I did get an agreement from you. I'd like to know what the agent or anyone else thinks here on the panel. I like the way they do it in France. I like that they have so many options.
Yeah, that's why I voted Libertarian, because I wanted a third option in debates. I knew Gary Johnson wasn't going to win, but we got enough votes here in Texas to have them automatically admit.
Oh man, I don't want it to be a big tangent, Amanda, but did you hear that it's very possible that next year they will be debating? They will be on the debate stage?
They will be in Texas. We did get enough here. I'm not sure how many other
states. So it's definite, man. That is great. And we'll get into some American stuff, Amanda. Thank you so much for hanging in here, Stag. You're just such a gentleman, Staggerson. It is an honor to have you on here and be part of the crew. But anyway, carry on, folks. I'm sorry about that.
So yeah, I was sort of saying that perhaps, you know, the Blairite vision, you know, that kind of centrist but kind of, how shall we say, media slick persona, that might actually have come to an end. I think, yes, we definitely would need a centrist on both sides, really, because it would be great to have a reasonable government and a reasonable opposition for once, you know.
Right.
But I think the idea of sort of slick Mr. Blair, that might be past it. I think in that regard, one is looking for something new.
That's hard for you to say, isn't it, Brett? Slick Mr. I noticed that it seems to me that Mr. Agent is kind of maybe a Blair supporter. And would you say that you're a Blair supporter, sir? No, I shouldn't even have said that.
Loathe the man, but please go on.
When I hear Blair and Slick, my mind goes to Blair White. Sorry.
Well,
Amen.
I'm more looking at objectively, like what has a track record of winning elections. I agree actually that that kind of the Blair vision basically led people to distrust politicians, and now people want authenticity as opposed to
and they think they have it in Jeremy Corbyn. Yes.
But authenticity does not have to mean ideologue or somebody who's, I guess, inflexible. And the thing that worries me about Jeremy Corbyn is that he genuinely is he's genuinely someone with a, I guess, an inflexible political vision that he wants to he basically wants to impose that on everybody.
I mean, is that
else.
Perhaps another parallel with Donald Trump? But again, in Donald Trump, with his kind of idiosyncrasies, people kind of think, well, they have authenticity. That basically he may not be a kind of smooth political performer, but this is the real person.
But he tweets at 3 o'clock, and he tweets dumb stuff at 3 o'clock in the morning, so he's one of us, kind of deal.
Along those lines, yes.
Yeah.
I think the Donald Trump has an authenticity In so much, I tell you, a moment where even I, and I'm not like any great Trump supporter, but like even I thought, oh my God, the president of the unit. Did you see when he retweeted the CNN thing? I just thought, my God, now you've got the president who's acting like an edgelord. Like, isn't that,
I was hoorahing that up one side, down the other. But I gotta say it, man. The Britisher made some points. I thought about it really hard for a couple of days, and I realized we're not talking about the bloody football team in town. We're talking about the president of the United States. I wish he would just calm it down a little bit on that stuff.
Well, I think the argument I put to the ogre at the time was to consider that he wasn't just the head of the administration, that he was actually also the head of state.
Yeah.
So his tweeting memes out at 3 o'clock in the morning is perhaps the equivalent of the Queen tweeting memes out over here.
Yeah,
perhaps that
totally
wouldn't
agree.
quite work.
I totally agree. He needs to act more presidential, but it's fucking hilarious at least.
It's funny. It's definitely funny.
I guess my point is, can you imagine like Theresa May even like sending a tweet, let alone that one? Can you imagine like Angela Merkel getting involved in something?
No, but both of those women are cowards with no sense of humor.
You could imagine, on a sort of off chance, Boris Johnson doing it.
Oh, heck yeah. Nigel.
Yeah.
Which one of y'all's candidates is the more... Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you didn't. Go ahead. I was just blurting.
I was just saying, which one of y'all's candidates do you think is the more attractive?
In Britain, if you've got the choice between Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May, I think it's basically just head for the cliffs of Dover and take a running jump.
Thank you. I would say neither.
So it doesn't work in Britain like it does in America then?
Well, they're both ugly, Amanda. They're neither one of them are attractive.
Not even the Conservatives want to actually really go into an election with Theresa May as leader because they know they would be annihilated.
Well, I mean, but to address Ogre, Donald Trump's no looker either, but he looked better than Hillary, and my cousin was right. The dude won.
Well, Donald looks good because he's a billionaire. That makes everybody attractive.
That's true.
Did anyone see that? I'm sorry, we're completely going off on a tangent. I promise we will come back. But did anybody see that wonderful tweet that went out today with Hillary Clinton kind of with a smirk looking down somebody else's plunging neckline?
Oh,
no, I did not see that.
No.
Oh my God!
I'll have to see if I can find I'll have to see if I can find a link to that because I
think that's been around for a bit though. I've seen a few pictures where they've caught her eyeing someone of the same sex. Well, I mean,
she's not fucking her husband. We know that.
I've just put the link up. So basically, if you want to put that on screen.
Oh yeah, Brett. Hey, of course, I live the service. So
well, we'll just work that ogre a bit, make him sweat it out.
I actually set myself up with a wireless mouse over here, so I can lay right here and do it. I'm on it.
Oh, I hope the kids calm down. They're hollering in there.
Yeah, man. I don't know. You probably didn't hear, but
in case you haven't heard it, the ogre is really down with the flu. So what I'm doing here is just supremely cruel right now. I'm actually making a move.
You're fine. I've almost got it. I'm telling you, I'm still laying down. I don't want to put the camera on because I usually have at least like my preacher shirt on, and man, I'm laying here in a white. I don't even want to describe myself, and I look like a train hit me.
but just to get back on this authenticity, I actually
go
think
ahead. Yes,
I would actually like to nuance the analysis a little bit from where it has been. Okay, it's not that people like Bill Clinton or Tony Blair in the 90s, and then they it's not that they weren't authentic, and then we got to a point where now we like authentic politicians. It is that
you're desperately trying not to laugh, aren't you?
I'm looking at this picture of
we
Hillary
have to
Clinton.
be fair about this picture. She might be looking at him thinking, I could afford those.
Could just be blinking too.
No, she
well, I was just
looking.
following the Britishers. I'm just trying to be a half-ass producer. So I was just following. So carry on. You were actually making a really logical apologia there. So if you
I think you can take it down now. I think it's otherwise too distracting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did. thought I did. Sorry about that.
So all I'm trying to say is that okay, it's not that people really want authenticity, quote unquote. Okay, it is that the trouble with the Clinton Blair model of doing things is that everything became very soundbitey. Everything became very media managed, and what we have now is a will for people to kind of go off script a little bit. Like the reason that people like Trump is that he doesn't talk in sound bites. Like he just answers questions. Like somebody asks him a question and he just off the cuff answers them. It's the reason why people like Boris as well. It's because Boris or Nigel Farage, because these people just talk. You know, they say whatever's on their mind, and it doesn't sound managed. And Theresa May basically kind of did that whole soundbite thing, and people didn't like that.
Strong table government.
But in another way,
soundbite, wasn't it?
In another way, Theresa May is extremely authentic to who she is. And who she is this kind of quite nerdy, quite awkward woman who spent her whole life in politics. And people...
a bit of a martinet.
Yeah, and people don't like that. People don't like who like, they want charisma. They want a charismatic person who might make them laugh, or, you know, so those things haven't gone away. So I do think that we can overplay the extent to which people don't want the slickness, as you put it. I think they do want the show. I mean, look at, like, they do want the showbiz. Like, if I reckon if you look at interest in politics since Trump has come into it, it's probably through the roof compared to wherever it's been. And whether you love him or you absolutely hate him, he's box office, because people care. People take notice.
But as I say, isn't the kind of slickness, isn't that kind of staged managedness, isn't that actually just a substitute for the charisma? Do you understand what I mean? Basically, one creates a perfectly crafted image rather than there actually being the kind of Alexander the Great, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I actually think that Tony Blair and Bill Clinton had fantastic charisma, and their skill was that they were able to look straight down the camera, deliver those completely stage managed lines that were being fed to them by whoever.
They make it sound like a good old boy.
And people actually believed it. And where that model didn't work is when you had people like Gordon Brown. Do you remember him? Or Theresa May or Hillary Clinton delivering those same lines, and people just say, "I don't believe it. I don't believe that you mean that. That's something that you've revised for, something that you've learned."
Well, you know Bill Clinton's nickname here, don't you, academic agent? What we called him?
What is that?
Slick Willie.
Slick Willie.
Oh yeah, man. The guy was just, the Britisher was talking the other day about how they went to the fair, him and Hillary Clinton did, while she's running for office, and they go in and a gentleman is making some bangers, you know, and here you got Billy, he ends up behind on the grill, you know, flipping bangers and talking and laughing, and Hillary just gets a scowl and leaves. He was just, and still is, even though he's getting old.
Well, I mean, Bill Clinton was generally regarded as just about the finest campaigner of his age. But I think when it comes to Bill Clinton and it comes to Tony Blair, we are looking actually of figures of different magnitude. I think with Bill Clinton, I would completely agree. He had something. With Tony Blair, I think it really was just mainly the stage management. And I know people will accuse me of being biased because I just don't like the man.
No, I agree with you.
I would actually be quite happy to accept that he had certain abilities that allowed him to carry it off. But to me, I don't actually agree that those abilities were necessarily there. I just think that the Mandelsonian management was just at its peak at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay. But I guess you have to have, like, even if he's just an empty puppet, like that puppet still needs to have like core traits. So like the Mandelson trick did not work with Gordon Brown, because Gordon Brown couldn't smile. For example, do you understand what I'm saying? Like he just
just in order to let the audience know, there was one or two because Gordon Brown was always terribly grim, so it became obvious that at some point his advisors told him, "Please, would you just try and smile a little bit, Prime Minister?" So he tried to build in a smile at times in the interview, and he not only did he smile always at the wrong times, but it was a kind of rictus grin smile that kind of looked a bit like, the Joker in Batman.
Yeah, like he was in
just
pain.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
You might want to put a picture up of that as well.
If somebody puts a link in the side chat, I'll be happy to. But I remember old Gordon Brown. I watched a good video, where it showed like his best, those rictus grin moments where it looked like he had a puppet master that had strings on each side of his, and he looked a little disturbing.
Ooh, like that episode of Angel. Somebody could meme that.
but it's funny, like you mentioned Peter Mandelson. Okay, now if he was just the genius behind all of these things, why wasn't it just him? Why wasn't it Mandy himself? And my contention would be is that because when Peter Mandelson got on TV, people just thought, hold on a second, I do not trust this guy. No, we're not going to vote for actual Machiavelli here. So, like, Blair was a very good kind of front man to stick there because, I think people didn't have those thoughts about him. Like, he was able to smile, and they didn't like immediately think that this guy was evil.
That's what Bill did with Hillary. He was just a puppet for her. He was the one that had the charm and the charisma, and people would vote for. Nobody was going to vote for her. She knew that back then. That's why he was president, so she could run shit.
Well, there we go. And all I'm saying is that it's under. I guess I disagree with Britisher. I think that I think that Blair was able to do some things that those other people weren't.
Well, yeah, as I say, I think we'll kind of have to agree to disagree there, because I think you see certain sort of strengths in Blair because he kind of was a centrist. I understand that. I personally, mainly because of his social, so when it comes to his sort of social authoritarianism, I regard him to perhaps be just about the worst prime minister since the war.
I can see that certainly as well. Yeah, I can see that.
So, the amount of things that got banned under Tony Blair, that was quite amazing. That was quite breathtaking in that regard. And he, when it came to his administration, they managed to hide everything behind the fig leaf of the liberalization of homosexuality. So basically, what you mentioned earlier, that homosexual rights were bestowed, and that a lot of the laws that still forbode various aspects of homosexuality were done away with. Mm-hmm. And that was held up as their kind of grand achievement in liberalism. But
that's what Obama did.
It hid a huge swathe of authoritarian, regressive laws. And it also, kind of detracted people from that. And everybody still reported on him as nice liberal Mr. Blair, as opposed to the absolute authoritarian monster that this man was.
Yeah,
that's what Obama did.
Yes. Obama like in that regard was something similar. He did a lot of mentioning of the LGBTQ community and so on, whilst at the same time flying drones around and, if need be, killing American citizens without trial. So. Yes, there was an aspect of that you basically, now you see it, now you don't. That you play this charade of holding up one or two talking points that are currently in the news and saying, "Look how liberal I am," and meanwhile you are you are doing all sorts of shady things, and the media strangely cooperates and never mentions them.
Look at Justin Trudeau as well. Or do you think, he's more openly authoritarian?
Well, yes, but he would again he would portray himself as authoritarian for all the right reasons. He is merely forbidding the bad things.
That would have been Hillary.
Yes, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was in favor of Donald Trump winning. I know the ogre might find this hard to believe because I sometimes, I frequently give Donald Trump a hard time.
I know you hate him.
I much preferred him to Hillary Clinton because I truly do believe that Hillary Clinton would have been a complete disaster as president of the United States.
I know that's true, mate, but I just hate that what we talked about this. It seems like a lot this last couple of weeks. I'm with you in the boat that I'm tired of having to choose between the lesser of two evils. Why can't we pick the greater of two goods? We very rarely do we get that choice.
We kind of have to kick our democracies up the backside somehow and produce a system that actually, allows, dare we say it, good people to actually ascend to the top again, because that doesn't seem to be the case anymore these days.
Well, my theory is it's a shift in the level of respect that these jobs get has shifted, where the people who fall in the psychopathy and sociopath line go. Because, there's lots of people within the population who are psychopaths and sociopaths, and they don't all kill people. A lot of them go and they do these high-level jobs that get them the respect that they're seeking.
Yep.
And it used to be that they became scientists, they became doctors, they became researchers, because that's where the high levels of respect and the high pay were. Nowadays, they're becoming businessmen and politicians because that's where they get that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think, I don't know, we can continue on Corbyn, or if you think we might have kind of milked that one dry, we can always move on to something else.
I'm sure hoping that we got the academic agent here. I'm still gonna let you just I'm just asking and begging you to remain the captain here today. But man, I want to hear Staggerson say something, and I know he's got something to say about the SJW stuff. But yeah, come on, folks, we've gotten on this. Everybody knows how
we could kind of move on to sort of something that is a bit more social justice, if you want, because I mean, Mr. Agent will be aware I kind of had a second question on that list regarding what one could call kind of the feminist surge that we have seen in the British Parliament. And basically, you just kind of wonder, does it basically mean that with the way things are set up, that just the more women you pile in, the more feminist you make it? Or is there actually another way of getting women into Parliament without just turning it into a complete feminist cabal? Because in order to inform people on this, I had in the week that was, I had a piece this time round where there was actually 56 Labour women MPs who sent I think they've sent a joint letter to the Prime Minister, urging her to do something about the gender balance, about the Brexit negotiating team in Brussels. So as though negotiating Britain's exit from the European Union wasn't already complicated enough, there are now some women who think that the chief concern is how many vaginas are present at the negotiating table.
I think if you want to get an influx of women in Parliament who aren't feminists, you got to find women like me. There are centrist women out there. We do exist. Hi.
That's right. That's what. Well, you know what, Amanda. That's why you're here. And another, here it is. It's all about merit, and we're moving so far away from a meritocracy to the point where I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to bang on it, but Amanda, what is it? Do you think? I mean, what's going on here? Do you really believe that there is a huge number of females that feel like this is actually a problem?
No, I think they're taught to feel like it's a problem, and they have been since they were teenagers, because MTV started pumping this shit out and the teenagers were watching it. That's why you have this generation of idiots running around, because they believe the shit the TV taught them. And the parents weren't around because they both have to work, because that's how this economy is. So nobody fucking taught them that it's TV.
There's one very strange thing that's happened, which is that, I mean, clearly this is the result of individual women's choices. I think all of us on this panel would agree that
Yes.
it's not because of systemic oppression or anything else. It is because women choose to do these things. And yet I regularly find myself standing in front of lecture halls of 90, 100 women who have all chosen to do a humanities subject rather than a STEM subject, who then choose to study for basically 3 years with all of my colleagues exactly why they're being oppressed. Like, they basically learn, they go to university choosing a subject where they know they're going to come out of it, like the other end of it, with a lower wage than if they'd done a STEM subject. Like, we know that subjects like engineering or computer science, like, these have tangible jobs at the end of them with like, I don't know, good middle incomes. Whereas an English degree or a history degree could get you that, but it also might, it doesn't guarantee it. Okay. And I just find that a bizarre little quirk of the system where now we've actually got it built in that they go to universities to learn exactly about how they're getting oppressed, when they could, if they were just sitting in one classroom over studying a STEM subject, be doing something about it. I find that, like, that's now built in institutional teaching of a problem that doesn't have to be a problem. Does that make sense? Does that make any sense to you guys?
Oh yeah.
It's the victim mentality I'm talking about, that they're being spoon-fed and taught since they're teenage kids. They're learning it from TV. They're getting taught it when they go to college. It never ends. They're learning that they don't have to take responsibility or accountability for anything because they could just blame somebody else instead.
It's like they're being spoon-fed and told that nobody's ever going to let them feed themselves.
Yeah.
That's beautifully put, actually. Yes, I like that one.
There were about 3 or 4 big gender things last week, weren't there? I just, can we go through them and see what, like, everybody's views on these were? So
Crack on, mate.
All right. So the first one was Doctor Who being a woman. Okay. Now, I didn't see any big problem in this myself, because Doctor Who can basically shape shift and is an alien. But
I had a whole. Sorry.
The way it was seen as smashing through the glass ceiling, as if it was like the second coming of Martin Luther King or something.
Oh,
like when we've got a woman prime minister, when, like, I just don't get that.
No.
A woman prime minister. We have got a woman head of state, the Queen. We've got a woman head of government, and when it comes to the head of the judiciary, the chairwoman of the Supreme Court in Britain has just recently been put in place, so that now also is a woman.
You're about to send me on a fan rant here, like I went on my last video.
Do it. Go.
It pisses a lot of fans off because it makes no fucking sense. Okay, yes, the Doctor can change his gender, but it's controlled subconsciously. That's why he can't be a ginger, even though he wants to be, because his subconscious mind is still punishing him for the things he's done in his past. It won't allow him to have what he wants. But we know his mind is stable because he has always been a man. We know every life he's had. The master.
Are there instances where he checked his genitalia to make sure he was a man?
Yes, because his conscious mind doesn't know what his subconscious is going to do to him, so he always checks. But the master, it made sense when they changed his gender, because he had just found out his entire life was a lie. He was used as a tool. He's been driven insane by the War Council since he was a child, just so they could use him. So he had a mental break. It made sense that it swapped his gender. For the Doctor, it makes zero fucking sense. And it's like they're slapping in the face every strong female companion he's had. Because ever since Rose, all his companions have saved him. Some of them have been smarter than him. That's just how it goes.
Well, one of the
females
things
are even stronger.
One of the things I would point towards is essentially it's a product. It's a product you want to sell. Now, if you sell a product for 54 years, as this one has been done, and it is led by a male lead, and you then suddenly decide to inform the rest of the world, oh, by the way, now this product is going to substantially change. We hope you still like it just as much. That might not be a wise way of going about it. But basically, I mean, that is very similar to what happened with the comic books, where suddenly, wasn't it Thor and an Iron Man and whatever was suddenly being tampered with, and suddenly there were girls or something like that. And
and instead of just making new characters,
they just didn't react to they didn't react well towards that at all, because there is such a thing as audience expectation. And if you suddenly kind of challenge audience expectation, you better have a good reason for it. And in this case, the reasons seem to be entirely social justice. They didn't really. There doesn't really seem to be any pressing need to change the formula of something that is selling around the world and is doing well.
Well, I was really interested in this last week, and so what I went and did is I went on iTunes and I typed in Doctor Who, and I pulled up all of like the hardcore Doctor Who podcast, seeing what their reaction would be, and I was actually really interested that I didn't come across a single one who took against this decision, like from the people who run those podcasts. In fact, there were a lot of people saying, actually, if this Doctor had been a man, I'd have been disappointed. I'd have been let down. It had to be a woman this time. So, now, I'm not part of the fandom, but can anyone explain why all those Doctor Who podcast presenters were saying that?
No, I'm a little behind, so maybe somehow in the season and a half that I'm behind, they explain the Doctor's mental break. That is the only way he could swap his gender. So I don't see any way they could say was expected. Like, they all of a sudden changed his companion into a gay chick, and the whole thing about her character is that she's a gay chick. And that bothered me too, because with Jack Harkness, they made it totally not a thing. It didn't matter that he was bi, that he would fuck anything. So why did it have to be a big deal that she was gay? Why did that have to be all that she was? And so they had to get more and more feministy, is what they're saying.
So has the show basically become an SJW show now then?
Pretty much.
I don't watch it, but
yes, by the sound of it, it does seem to, from what I've heard, it has, I mean, I know one or two sort of hardened Doctor Who fans who have just basically recently just given up on it and just said, no, I'm just not watching it anymore, because it is trying to manipulate me as I'm watching it, and I don't like that.
And the main writer is left too, and there's a new one. So it's going to get
that might say something to the problem, Amanda, or?
Yeah, I think so, a lot. I think the new writers are having more and more influence, like, because it's been slowly getting more and more like I said, all the female companions have been stronger than the Doctor, and the females are getting consistently stronger, but they've been slowly breaking down the Doctor more and more.
Well, hey, Staggerson, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you care about Doctor Who?
0. Wait, that's not on the scale. 1.
No, that's fine.
I've never watched the show. I do care about this whole feminism in the media issue, though, because what I wonder is how many times do they have to break this glass ceiling that hasn't existed my whole entire life?
Exactly.
You want to take me back to my childhood, and I'm watching Terminator 2 and the Alien series. Yes. Thinking, damn, those are some bad bitches.
Yes, exactly. Like, never in media has this been a problem, not within our lifetime. I don't even think ever. In all honesty, there have always, since the silent movie era, there have been really popular, really famous females.
Well, yes, but if you create it as a problem, it then gives you leverage.
Well, who was it that was saying that they go to the gender studies? Wasn't an academic agent, and they come out knowing all the ways that they've been oppressed, which they didn't know before because they're not oppressed. These things are being taught because they don't exist. And I mean, oh my gracious.
Choosing to learn those things as opposed to learning the things that would break the oppression, as it were.
So this was the second big thing that happened last week. And I can't remember if you mentioned this in your video, Britisher, but the Advertising Standards Agency.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, my God. I mean, did you read that basically Orwellian document? It was just...
it was just terrifying. That the advertising, in order to explain for the audience, the Advertising Standards Authority, that's their name, the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA, came out with a statement whereby henceforth they will no longer, because their job is to police advertising here in Britain, and primarily their job has been, I mean, first off, to make sure that advertisements are not misleading. That makes perfect sense. That you make sure that people aren't being completely lied to about what a product can do.
And that's all they should do, basically.
On top of that, then, they also police advertisements that they would think might cause widespread offense. Now, that's always been one of my bugbears, because it's just an excuse for censorship, really.
Yeah.
But now they have come, you know, this is not Orwellian enough. So now they've come out and they have said that they will now no longer tolerate damaging gender stereotypes within advertising. So this is now no longer a question of whether the public is offended. That basically it is, if they are offended, that's enough. If basically it's the housewife doing the shopping or the cleaning in the household, that is a gender stereotype, and that is harmful to young minds and to adults, and therefore that needs to be stopped.
Why, sure.
But if they have the man do it, it's just a gender stereotype as well. You're just forcing the gender stereotype onto the male.
Well, this was it. My immediate thought went to how quickly will this be weaponized against them? Like, so for example, I'm sure you'll agree, if you ever watch British adverts, an enduring stereotype, okay, is, I guess, kind of like the bumbling, henpecked husband. Like, do you recognize that as a type in adverts?
Well, yeah, they do that here too. I mean,
yeah.
This man who's basically useless in all ways, you know, and with his kind of wife folding her arms, tapping her heel, and you know, he's like that. To me, seems like a negative.
And this warm motherly figure always will step up and say, "Give it here, dear," and then she will do it properly. That's kind of the.
And that stereotype exists because all women feel like that every once in a while, and so it's funny to take it and turn it into a whole character.
Well,
just
not only
they
that,
have the nagging wife from the man's point of view. It's funny.
But Amanda, also, let's face it. No matter if your husband made whatever he makes now, which I'm sure is fine, or if he made $500 million a year, who at the end of the day is the one that's going to the market to get the things for the household?
Me.
Right. So who do they want to appeal to? So as soon as so even though it's not all the time, as you just mentioned it, I know it happens to my wife often, women are very often, you know, left standing there tapping their toe because, you know, us guys, whereas just because I don't want to get into it because I don't want to sound like a feminist or anything else. I'm not. But of course you appeal to that person. Just like when you're trying to sell bikini wax, you show beautiful young girls in bikinis.
Yeah.
But my point is, how do you okay, so we all know that there's some element of truth in this stereotype that we all recognize and we've seen 1,000 times in on TV and in adverts and all the rest of it. How do they possibly start enforcing that? Like, if people brought
they basically do what the BBFC does for film censorship in this country, and that is they simply claim expertise in this area.
Well,
they basically say, we are the experts, we can adjudge this.
Well, it's
themselves above everybody else, and they say that their judgment basically is superior to anyone else's because they are experts in the field, and that is what they got to do, because the BBFC have got away with that approach for decades.
It's going to be like that episode of Family Guy one of these days where they're censoring real life.
And this is my whole theory of the left, like not just the SJ, but like of the whole left, is that basically all they ever want to do is to appoint or anoint philosopher kings in various different scenarios who make the call on behalf of everybody else because they have the right values. And you can see it very clearly with this advertising standards agency thing. It's, you know, they've got the people with the right values and the right positions who can then decide. They can take the decision for millions of other people what counts as a negative gender stereotype and what counts as a positive one. And they know because they're the experts, and we have to bow to their knowledge. Would everybody agree with that? Does everybody agree with that kind of basic characterization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can pretty much put on their logo. Underneath, they can put the royal motto: Dieu est mon droit, God and my right. And yeah, that will pretty much be that will pretty much sum up who and what they are.
And real quick, I want to shill a really good movie that's about fighting the FCC. Pump Up the Volume. If you haven't watched that, you should
great
watch that.
movie with Christian Slater.
Yes, fucking amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah,
watch
Happy
it.
Harry Hard On.
Hard On. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Or
man,
the 10 Packard Hell.
for you British people, if you haven't seen that, I
Please go
recommend
watch
both of you
Something to
lads
look
would
out
love
for.
that movie.
Pump up the
Anything
volume.
that is against censorship will go down well with me, because I am one of those people who really believes that this country is pretty much being censored to its knees by now.
Well, what's hilarious is this is an old movie. I was a little kid and this movie
Oh,
was
yeah.
already considered old, but it's awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was must have been 92, 93. Anyway, just to take some time, Agent and Britt, if you haven't seen that, Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater. And this, do you remember the actress's name?
I
Miss Wolfram?
cannot remember her name at all.
Can't either. She was
not
kind
that
of like,
important.
she was like that one girl from
There's the
Craft.
patriarchy at work again.
No, she's really not that important to the story. She just kind of brings him out of his shell a little bit. He's
Oh, yeah,
the
no.
important one.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. It's got no feminism. It's like she said, it is simply a great movie about a kid that I don't want to give it away, but he starts a little radio station. He thinks he's talking to himself one night, and then it turns out he's not. And this is before YouTube and all this stuff, and it rolls from there. It's really good.
Well, I'll have to check
Yeah,
that
move
out.
on to 3 if you want to. Our Staggerson, I ain't heard like nothing, man. You don't be so polite,
I've
Stat.
said some things. I've said some things.
I know, but do you have something
Hey,
else
for
you
most of
wanna
the
say?
show, they've been talking about British politics for.
Oh yeah, I know
forever.
that.
What do I know about that?
That's
just
why
wanna
I
give
kept
you a
jumping in
chance.
with how it's
That's
so
all.
very similar to American politics.
It is.
Did Staggerson, did you want to say a bit about the advertising standards thing before I bring up the third gender thing that happened last week?
That's going to be a fucking dumpster fire. I think they're going to fucking hang themselves with that shit. That's going to be such a fucking disaster. Seriously?
Well, I mean,
do they really think that's going to work? What are they going to do? Just say nobody can put out commercials?
The problem is that they have simply appointed themselves to now have that power. So really the only authority that could challenge them would be Parliament. So this is basically the problem we're facing, Staggerson, that here is an authority that has just simply now said, we are taking this power for ourselves. And
yeah, that's silly. We have that in America with the EPA.
But don't really have any opportunity to do anything about it.
It's horrible. I mean, they're going to have pushback from the advertisers.
Well, I mean, they already charge y'all just to watch TV. Like, you got to pay a TV tax. That's fucking weird, man.
You liked that one, did you, Amanda? The television tax, yes.
Well, it blew my mind because I was asking Cabbage Patch Bastard, how do they know if you watch TV? It's like, well, if you got TV in there, or if your neighbor turns you in, they'll fine you if you haven't paying your tax, your TV tax.
That's why you just have a TV that hooks up to the internet.
As long as you've got a monitor, then that's fine. If you have a monitor attached, say, to a DVD or something like that, so basically if it cannot receive television, then you're fine. But even if you swear blind that you never use your television to do anything other than to watch DVDs and play video games on it, if it is capable of of receiving the actual programs, they will demand their TV license.
How much?
Bullshit.
Oh, I mean,
how much does it cost?
It must be something like the equivalent of about $200 a year, mustn't it?
Really?
Yeah, it's about 120, 130 pounds a year. And it is actually a very neat segue into the third thing that happened to do with gender last week, which was the big controversy around the gender pay cap.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God.
At the BBC. So basically, because it's publicly funded in this manner, the BBC is they have to publish their top earners list every single year.
This is now new, really. I think Parliament made them do that, didn't they? So I don't think they have done this before. So this was the first time they did it.
And as a result of them publishing this list, it has been revealed that there's a big gap between the top earning men and the top earning women who work for the BBC, and it's resulted in a I guess a massive public outcry about the so-called BBC gender pay gap. So
where's the button? The shoe on head button. We need the button.
I am actually fairly cynical about that, because the people who were speaking most loudly right from the beginning about this pay gap were the BBC themselves. And to my mind, it was a very, very crafty way of managing the news story, because what actually emerged was that some of these people were getting outrageous sums of money. I mean, this is not me talking from a position of, oh, well, you know, nobody should earn a lot of money. I understand full well that if you are the presenter of the top Saturday night program, you know, the top Saturday night show on television, you will get a substantial salary. I have no problem with that. But in some cases, these were kind of, you know, run-of-the-mill news readers and radio, you know, presenters and things like that, where you just go, these people are earning how much? The way the BBC handled this was, rather than to just present the figures and go, this is how much we are paying for them, and then stand back and wait for the outrage, what they did was immediately guide the entire debate, the entire narrative toward, you know, the men are getting more than the women.
Oh.
So they kind of steered it that way. And in my view, that was entirely cynical. That was entirely deliberate.
Oh.
Yeah, they're like, don't pay attention to how much we're giving them. Pay attention to the fact that the women aren't getting as much. Then we can give out more money. You have to give us more money.
Yeah, and I just thought that the figures were completely unwarranted in some cases. But that never really managed to get to the top of the pile in the debate, because everything was completely dominated by the gender wage gap. And you just felt, well, I'm sorry, but this seems to be artificial. And at the same time, once again, when you look at some of these figures, it is actually quite clear why this bloke is earning more than this woman, because you have to look at the actual programs that these people are presenting, and you kind of realize, well, in some cases, it's fairly obvious.
Yep.
But in my view, more than likely, the overall wages that these people are getting could more than likely be halved. I mean, that's more than likely how drastic it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, it won't surprise anyone, because I'm obviously generally for pro-free markets. The market rate is whatever it is. Okay, so the market rate for...
I agree, but if you got someone like Hugh Edwards on a salary of something like £700,000, I would, if I were the BBC, I would say to him, good luck. You know, if you think you can get this elsewhere, go somewhere else.
Don't do it. That is an awful lot of money, man. That's a lot of cash.
That's where you, and as I say, this is not some kind of top presenter of a show or anything like that. This is a newsreader.
I've never heard of the guy.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where, so I'm generally for the principle, like, it makes sense, you know. Gary Lineker, 1.7 million. Like, if that's his market rate, that's his market rate.
I think in his case, that is more than likely his market rate, because he would be able to get substantial pay at competitors
elsewhere. But you don't think ITV would pay Hugh Edwards 600 grand?
But if you look at some of those, no, I really don't think. And I think as far as the BBC is concerned,
and he said 700 grand,
another newsreader for half that price if need be. And the fact that Hugh Edwards is the newsreader of the BBC, that is actually what makes him a recognizable face. So basically, 6 months down the line, it is going to be their replacement who is the next Hugh Edwards.
Oh, so in other words, nobody even remember him, because remember Pierce Morgan, you know, he came over here and he tried his hand. He just didn't make it. So like you said, if they, because here's the thing about this that is really different, you know, a man is saying that y'all pay for TV. So this should really be personal to every British person, because you directly pay. So you don't want to see your money being thrown down the tubes. And listen, so what they're talking about now, help me understand this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
They are talking about bringing the male's wages down.
Do you really think so? There has already been an open letter sent by most of the women on that list demanding more money.
Oh, right. That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So obviously it's not about bringing the male wage down. No, they want the female wage to go up.
Well, it's all about money. It's greed.
I'm actually looking down this list. It's kind of quite interesting. Like, do you know that Laura Koonsberger is exactly the same as Andrew Neil? Does that sound right to you?
Now, I know who Andrew Neil is. He's kind of the hefty guy with a bit of a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of like him. I like that Barbarians at the Gate speech he gave.
Well, and then, as I say, there are some people on there who are on radio of whom I have never heard in my life. You know, you just go, hang on, how much do these people earn? Now, as I say, if it's someone like Chris Evans, he is a big radio star. He was the one they took and had present Top Gear when they tried to kind of do it without Jeremy Clarkson.
That's a great show, man.
So as such, when it comes to Chris Evans, yes, he, again, market value, it's obvious he would very easily get a job, a very highly paid job elsewhere. So you do have to pay people like that in order to keep them on the books. I have absolutely no problem with those people earning really big salaries. But when you look at some of those people on that list, it is obscene.
But I guess this is the problem. There's that with each and every case, it's a margin call. For, like, would you pay Andrew Marr 400 grand to present the Marsh? Like, do you think he is worth it? But like, your view and whoever is on the board, it's just two people's views, right? It's entirely subjective as to whether you want them or not, which is I guess the problem where you have something.
Yes, but you see, the problem, the thing that I would point out is that their main star value is not because they are stars. It is that they are on the BBC. Right, so effectively, they are the people, you know, who make these folks sort of celebrities. The moment that they are no longer on the BBC,
they're nothing.
They aren't really, because it is the BBC who has got the monopoly position and is the national broadcaster.
I actually thought this was really...
The reason you know who Andrew Marr is because the BBC provides him with the platform to be Andrew Marr. The moment you take him off that, he is no longer Andrew Marr. Do you understand what I mean? Because they will then replace him with Joe Bloggs. And within the space of 1 or 2 months, everybody will recognize the face of Joe Bloggs. So that's where I'm really coming from. I don't think that this argument of free market really operates here, because I don't think that this is... I think they are just basically getting constant, you know, upping of their salaries of 10-20%, and it pretty much just comes up with the rations until after a few years of being there, they are just earning obscene amounts.
See, this is a little area of interest of mine, and I actually looked into a couple of like test cases. There was one case in British TV where the guy who used to present Match of the Day, Des Lynam,
Des Lynam, yes,
who was famous basically for exactly the reasons that you said, because he was on the BBC. Okay, he was poached by ITV. He was on 500 grand a year with the BBC, and when ITV poached him, they gave him something like £5 million for like a 4-year contract.
Oh, 4 years.
So they gave him £5 million contract for 4 years, so he was basically getting more money than he was before.
Yeah.
Okay. And in fact, they even paid a transfer fee for Des Lynam. They paid a 750 grand transfer fee,
which was kind of appropriate given that he normally did the football. Yes.
Yeah. And when he presented the ITV football coverage, the viewing numbers were disappointing, which to me would suggest that whoever presents the football coverage, it doesn't really matter. Like
yes,
what matters is the slot and the channel and the subject matter.
Des Lynam as the chief presenter. It was Gary Lineker, the person you just mentioned before.
So if I was on that board, I would be saying, well, look at the empirical data. When this has happened before, it didn't really matter that we changed the presenter. Like, it didn't hurt our figures. ITV are always going to get less for the football because they've got adverts and because they've got other things. And in fact, there's an example of this in American television. Does anyone remember Jesse Ventura?
Heck yeah, the body.
Right.
Governor
unforgettable.
When Jesse Ventura left the WWF in 1991, okay, he was offered a contract by WCW, and he was on something ridiculous. He was on like, it was insane money for the time. Okay, like 200-300 grand. I think per show he was getting paid something like 50 grand per show just to commentate. Okay, he was getting paid like double the co-commentator who was on there with him. Okay, did he move the numbers? Did he move the dial? Was he worth the money? Like, he convinced Ted Turner that he was worth the money, but he didn't change the ratings at all, because it turns out people tune in to watch wrestling for things other than who the commentator is. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it is an interesting thing within the world of TV whether anybody is worth any of these things.
Well, it just goes back to what Britisher was saying about if you take somewhat, we know the BBC makes these people, and if you take that away, so in other words, wrestling made Governor Ventura. And let's do something, if y'all will humor me. I would really appreciate it. Let's I would like for the Britisher first and the academic agent to kind of give their last wrap this up in this whole British realm and give us your final thoughts on that. And then Britisher, if you'd pick the two things that you would like to get into, if we can do it quickly here and wrap the whole show up on the American side. That way it'll give maybe Amanda and I and Stag will have a little bit more
blend out of the British thing and kind of move into the US stuff a bit. So
just because it is Stag's
and Amanda,
I want to give them a chance to have a little bit more.
As long as we're sticking to the BBC, Brexit, and British Parliament and Corbyn, we're kind of excluding people, aren't we?
Well, no, but yes, but that's fine too, because hey, we know that on this channel, you and I, British, we have quite a lot of British people that tune in. Now it's getting a little late over there. I know not only is it getting late for you two, but it's getting late for our British people. And I really want to give, I mean, I keep saying it, I don't want to make him feel weird because I keep telling him to speak up. Like he said, he's not going to have a chance. I just want to have Stag to have a chance to throw a little bit in if he's got something in, and it'll make it a lot easier if it's about American stuff, right? So yeah, thank you, British. I would appreciate that. It's been really cool for me, though. I'll tell you all, you two are humbling. Agent, you're actually a very erudite gentleman, and it's been wonderful to hear your ideas on these things.
Thanks.
But if y'all would do that before we move on to the American thing, if y'all could just take a reasonable amount of time and give us the cherry on top, so to speak, on what we've been talking about here.
Well, I think when it comes to sort of the British politics that we've kind of seen, I think you can sense that we are seeing a kind of social justice bonanza going on over here. Whether it be television stations, whether it be Parliament, whether it be organizations that oversee advertising, it seems to be everywhere. It seems to be omnipresent. And one is kind of wondering how on earth one ever escapes this. I think the only thing that could ever lead to that, if basically the political will would set in, but basically if somebody would actually come to power who felt that it would actually win them the populace, that there is nothing to win, there is no gain, that people actually resent this kind of attempt at manipulating them everlastingly, because that is at the heart of what it is. One tries to basically convince people into spouting right, right speak, doing right think. So I think if we would basically find, not we, but if somebody in politics would find the strength within to basically start standing up, and not just in a way like Trump being a figurehead of people who project their desire to do something about social justice, but actually for somebody to seriously take steps and say this must end, then perhaps we could get rid of it. But at the moment, in whichever way you turn, there doesn't seem to be anybody on the horizon who is interested in any way, shape, or form of sticking their neck above the parapet and taking these people on. Because, of course, the moment he or she does so, he will be a sexist, misogynist, fascist. And who wants to be that?
Oh. Yeah, I just co-sign everything he said. And I mean, I guess one of the slightly interesting things that happened that we didn't mention is that a major politician, Tim Farron's career was basically ended because he couldn't reconcile his religion with the voting public. Like, he was no longer allowed to have religious beliefs and be the leader of his party. And that to me seemed to be a signal that the political climate has changed to the extent that people aren't even allowed to have views if they're not what British are called right speak views. So kind of a worrying development. But yeah.
Yes, with Tim Farron, it was the fact not that he was doing anything. It was the fact simply that he had religious views. So even if he kept them to himself, it was still not acceptable.
Oh, in Texas, we do it the other way. They actually have a law in the books that says you can hold any views you want to and run for office as long as you believe in God.
Wow.
You can't be an atheist.
There's the law that says that?
Yep.
All right. And we're going to get into some American stuff. That was a good nugget, though. That's unreal. But
I believe it.
Well, gentlemen, I'll tell you, that was a nice wrap up. That was great how you led right in one to the other. It was almost like it was rehearsed. And that was very good.
Don't give it away.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. I wanted to make it interesting. People are probably going, oh, they rehearsed this all. Yeah, this is pre-taped, even though you think we're chatting with you. But we did this 3 days ago. Stitching it all together. Amanda's a master at that. The collab thing. They're doing something across the country, and it seems like they're sitting in the same room. She's taught us the tricks of her trade.
Oh yeah, I'm so good.
So let's roll, boys. If that's the end of that, let's do this because I'm getting wore out. It's getting late over there. I just want to get into a couple of these things. I have an idea, but British, you've been doing so good. My mind's about halfway there, so I'll let you pick the good ones, and we'll see what we can do in this last. Let's say maybe shoot for a half hour tops, and see what we do here.
Well, I think I mean, you've provided us a list here with things we could talk about here. So, I mean, I will just basically, just because I like walls, I will pick your third point here, which is wall or no wall, which I believe,
no wall.
Which I believe points to the fact that I think a bill was kind of will be put through the House or has been passed to the House. Which would allow for the building of 28 miles of wall on the Mexican border. So we all remember that last time round, Donald Trump needed to drop any talk of the wall because otherwise he couldn't get it through the budget.
Yeah, well, here we go. That's good, Brett. In the interest of time, and I'm wanting to hear from Stag and from Amanda on this, and you two gentlemen also, of course. But here we go. Let me break it out this way. I was told by somebody that I voted for twice to be the nominee for the Republicans and for president, that Mexico would pay for the wall. He would get the crowd going WWE style. We're going to build a wall, and who's going to pay for it? Mexico. Who's going to pay for it? It reminded me of Hulk Hogan doing the, winding his hand up and putting it behind his ear. Mexico. So I'm not going to belabor this too long. I'm just going to say, for you, respectfully, Britisher, and for anybody else that thinks that I'm a, die hard. I don't care what he does. He can shoot somebody in the face in Manhattan, and no. Listen, the walls should be going up, and it should be Mexico paying for it by hook or by crook. And if that's not happening, I'm not going to say I won't vote for him, depending upon who's running against him next time. But that will hurt a lot of his credibility in my mind.
I'll jump in right here. I'm not a huge fan of the wall. I don't think it's going to do any good at all. I think tons of people are still going to come across regardless of a wall.
Yep, I agree.
That's kind of my opinion.
I think that money
They'll
should
blow.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You hadn't talked a lot.
They'll blow holes in it. They'll cut holes in it. They'll climb over it. They'll dig under it. They'll go around it. They'll cross the river.
Well, tunnels are already the
main
way they come through. Tunnels.
Can I ask the two of you? Have you have any of you seen that idea that at one point Trump recently said that it was pretty much his idea, even though it actually emerged afterwards that some contractor had forwarded it, and that was to make the wall solar.
Oh,
no, I hadn't.
So it would be a solar wall.
You can't get off of that, can you, Bruce?
If you get the chance, it always might be worth checking Thunderfoot's debunking of the idea of the solar wall, because he pointed out that, of course, solar panels have a value. And if you have a wall full of solar panels walking through the middle of, running through the middle of nowhere,
where all these, I don't want to sound racist, but
the people would actually nick the wall. Because they would arrive with screwdrivers and they would dismantle the solar panels and they would make off with your wall.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't really be able to do anything about it because they would already be on the Mexican side.
Well, I'll tell you what, Staggerson, to speak to what you said too, I don't know who's ever been to Tijuana or if anybody's ever been to San Diego or Tijuana. I've been to Tijuana many times. Right there, Stag, right underneath, they found tunnels that were right there where the border, part of the tunnel went right under where the Border Patrol is. Let's not forget that they dug a hole right to El Chapo's freaking cell and gave him a motorcycle. These people are like the Vietnamese, man. They're tunnel rats. So yes, I look at it this way. I just want to point out that Trump did say that it would maybe help stop people come over, but more than anything, it was a symbol. So what was you saying, Amanda? I just kept bulldogging through.
No. Sorry, I was interrupting you some, but I'm saying exactly. They come through in tunnels. The wall's not going to help anything, and we don't need to spend that much money on a symbol when what they should be putting that money into is protecting the Texas border. We have entire towns that are controlled by Mexican drug cartels, where women are just snatched up and sold into slavery, men too, small children.
Look, Mom, I completely agree with you, but here's the thing. I never was one of the ones that was like, oh, yeah, wall. I voted for him because of healthcare and taxes. But once a guy gets his base, Hulk Hogan style, Hulkamania running wild on you, and then now it's all about the budget and let's make it a solar wall and let's do this and that. It just hurts his credibility. It makes him just another politician that made a bunch of promises.
Well, true. Yeah,
I agree with that.
That's why people are pissed off at him. They did expect something better from him, but it's the same thing. No president can go into it knowing what it's like to actually be president. They all learn on the job, no matter what they've done before. And so they all make promises thinking, I'm going to have this power. I'm going to be the president. I can do it. But then they get there and find out, oh, shit, I can't.
Well, Stag, what can we do to make it Staggerson? Instead of a wall or in lieu of a wall, because I do believe you want to have a safe border. What could we do? What would be, what's the solution?
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know what you can do that's like humanitarian and reasonable besides like more border guards and stuff. But like Amanda said, these towns got to be under control that are ran by the drug cartels and people are getting kidnapped and shit like that. That's not cool.
We need to check the trucks more. The trucks
that are coming in. Say, what's next to you? I mean, what do we do about it? And Amanda, did you see? I'm sure you saw in Texas that just 8 people died in that truck. Oh my gracious!
I heard about that. Yeah, that's what we need to pay more attention to the truckers and to the people going up and down 34 because we know for sure they use that a lot. Like every time I travel down 34, I see people going. They have a car crammed full of stuff with another car towed behind them crammed full of stuff, and they're heading for Mexico to sell that shit. And you see trucks coming back.
Yep.
Can I ask a quick question about the wall, though? I seem to remember reading a couple of months ago that border crossings were down massively just as a result of Trump's rhetoric alone. It kind of was it he reduced border crossings by 60-70% or something.
So then why don't he do this, Agent? So instead of being, he's got to come to grips with the fact that he is the head of state of the United States of America. Instead of being this stand my ground and I'm never wrong and no, I don't pray and ask God for forgiveness because I just don't do anything wrong. Instead of all that, why doesn't he just stand up and say, well, look, I made a mistake in my promise, the promise that I made. I didn't realize that I could portray and project this image and get this idea going. You know, I'm going to have to back up on that. And I don't know if I'm not trying to be all convoluted. I'm telling you, I'm only hitting on 6 cylinders here. But you see what I mean? Because you're right, border crossings are down. This would be a wonderful opportunity for this man that I really like to stand up and say, look, I made a mistake. There ain't going to be a wall, like I said. We need to focus on these border towns, like Amanda said. We need to check trucks coming over here. We need to keep up a presence on the border, and they'll continue to fall that way. Obviously, it would be a huge waste of money.
Yes, exactly. I think that the reason the crossings went down is because he showed he was going to be hard on immigration. And
Right.
as long as he keeps showing that that's the stance he's going to take and coming over here illegally is not going to benefit you, it'll
Right.
keep dropping.
Because if there's no dreamers in those sanctuary cities, you don't need a wall, because if you take away the incentives to come here, why would they spend $3,000 to get raped by coyotes and snakeheads and have their daughters? You know, I mean, because they say it's, oh, you know, it's a lie. No, it's not. If you're a female coming across the border from Mexico to here and you are any way attractive, you're getting You're getting it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know I went off on that.
I suspect what will happen, though, is that the way Trump will play it, because if nothing else, Trump is a self-preservationist. I think he'll play it off as if, like, look, did you guys think the GOP were ever going to let a massive infrastructure bill get passed? Like, their ideology, you know, is against every bone in their ideological fiber.
Well, I'm not going to dominate, but instead of playing it off, I wish he would just do the right thing and admit a mistake in this area and then move forward and having immigration reform. And that way he could show us, just like with his crazy tweets at 3 o'clock in the morning, he could show us that, yes, he's just one of us. And this was just not the greatest of ideas. And the execution isn't happening. And now he's talking about budgets where we pay for it. And that wasn't part of the plan. And then just to move forward and do something else.
Well, I think in that regard, we're kind of touching upon something that we were almost talking about before when we're talking about Jeremy Corbyn and, you know, what do we actually look for in a modern day opposition politician or even a government politician. And that might be also perhaps somebody who can once in a while admit to a mistake. You know, because not only are they the sort of, you know, almost insane party machines whereby the party is always right, their party leader is always right, but at the same time, nobody ever makes a mistake. So I think in that regard, perhaps the future generation of successful politicians will be a generation that can actually, you know, own up to perhaps getting something wrong once in a while. And that may be able to placate a more cynical population.
That may be the wildest dream I've heard in a while.
You know, it's interesting because Trump is someone who has owned up to, like, he's openly changed on. I remember the torture thing when he basically said, oh, I thought it was right, but McMaster said it was wrong. So, and he's the expert, so I'll go with him. So, like, he has held up his hands in other areas before now. So it's not like it's not completely unbelievable that Trump might do that. But he kind of does it in a way without admitting that he was. he never admits that he's wrong, but he does change his position on things. Like he did it with China. He's changed his position on China in the past.
He's changed his position on many things. I mean, do you remember the Iran deal? The worst deal ever. Given that he's the expert on deals, he wrote the book on how to do the art of the deal, and the Iran deal was the worst deal he had ever seen. And he was going to change that Iran deal, and the very first day he took office. Has he changed anything? So in that regard, yes, he has shifted his position once in a while. But politicians are quite good at that. But what we get at this is not only does he, what we need is a politician that not only shifts position, but perhaps once in a while also can accept that perhaps he got that wrong.
But here's the thing with Trump. Okay, I genuinely think that he's deeply underestimated in terms of the deal making part. Okay, if you read books on cognitive psychology, you'll come across all of these different, like priming, anchoring, confirmation bias, or all of these kind of different heuristics, they call them. One of those effects is anchoring. Okay, so let's say I'm trying to sell you this mug that I've got in front of me, and I say, Britisher, you can get this for £10. I just me saying £10 is anchored where we're going to have this negotiation. So if you end up getting it for £2, you'll be like, oh well, that was pretty good. He came down from 10, and I got it for 2. But like if I started at 2, you wouldn't think it was a good deal. What I see Trump doing time and again is going in at an extreme position, and it will be way off the normal grid. Like, I'm going to build a fucking wall here, or I'm going to completely scrap this. And then coming, so it'll be the difference between 10 and 2 to where he ends up. But 2 is still a long way further up from where anybody else was thinking in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So he basically shifts the benchmark by going in at an extreme starting point. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think he's really good at that. But I actually have to run away. I need to go deal with kiddos in real life. They're bugging me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming, Amanda. I really appreciate it, girl.
Yeah, no problem. See you next time.
Yeah, hopefully next Monday if I can harangue Scott in, and you just take care of them kids, Mama, and hit me up if you ever need a thing. You know that.
All right. Bye.
See you out.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, folks.
Well,
we got one more in us. What we got going on here?
Okay. Let's see. What have we got for other subjects here? Because we've got the wall, so we've done the wall really. So I'm just desperately scanning, trying to find this page again.
And we had Sean.
Is there anybody who's got you prefer Sean Spicer? Shall we go with that?
No. I was just going mentally. No, honestly, I'd rather even not, because I'm not too up on that, and I don't really care much. I'm not sure what Stag feels about now that it's just us two Yanks left. But
same way.
you pick it, Brett.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the wall was an easy one because I thought that kind of that's a simple subject. But I think we have done healthcare kind of to death some other day, haven't we?
Yeah. That's another one.
So really,
I was only halfway on when I wrote that list today. I just kind of threw it on there. We could in fact, I'm down for this if I'm not putting Stag on the spot. We could look at something real quick. And Staggerson, if you got anything you want to talk about, you got these two gentlemen with us here. I think you can tell they're pretty bright bulbs. So anything you would want to bring up would be fine with me too, Staggy.
Oh, you put me right on the spot, huh?
No, well, that's what of course I do. That's what I do. But I think the Brits got something else while you think about that, though. What I'll do is I'll let you we'll have you bring up our last idea, and then all four of us will give our final thoughts, and we'll get out of here and have our evenings.
Well, I mean, if it kind of helps bind us over until Stags comes with the moon landings or whatever it is, we have got Sean Spicer, who just basically recently resigned in somewhat of a tumultuous situation, I think is the way to put it, because I think you kind of touched upon that, Olga, sort of saying that the position which Anthony Scaramucci actually now holds, that actually already existed before.
Yeah, but you know what,
really,
Britisher? Just an addendum. I was mistaken. Nobody was filling that position at the time, though.
Yeah. So as such, really, Sean Spicer was his own man. He was his own master.
No, what Trump did was he hired a boss for Sean. It looks like.
So now this boss man came in, and Sean Spicer clearly felt that this wasn't really going to be the gig he thought it was, and therefore decided to depart. Right. Anthony Scaramucci then kind of appointed a woman who kind of, I remember, introduced him before he came on, but he so totally overshadowed her that I think, you know, very few people would actually recognize her right now. Because it was the screen was definitely filled with him. Yeah. The one thing that I found rather telling at the time, and which I remember telling you, was that once again this is another Goldman Sachs man, and I just find it intriguing how this one company seems to have a stranglehold on any sort of influence of power, because it isn't as if they are the only, you know, investment bank on Wall Street. It isn't as if they're the only financial institution. I refuse to believe that the best and greatest minds only come from one particular company.
No, but they are the members of the New World Order, man. They're all the Bilderbergers and the Bohemians and whatnot. Believe that.
Very strange that yet again here comes another Goldman Sachs man, and in this case fills the position of communications, which I just don't really see where the link exactly is between international finance and communications. But yeah, there you have it.
Well, you hate to hear it from me, Britisher, but it all comes down to Goldman Sachs is they're at the top of that capstone, man. They really are. They're them. They're they. They're part of the New World Order, for lack of a better term.
I mean, you know, in that regard, I guess it would more than likely be the gods of finance from whichever company they would come. So, you know, there are the JP Morgans, there are the Morgan Stanleys. It isn't as if the world only really depends for finance on Goldman Sachs. So,
but there's always a head honcho, you see, and you're right. There's probably other money changers on Wall Street that are even. I'm not sure that Goldman Sachs is the biggest. I'd have to look. But the point being is, I believe that their members are the most connected in the deep state.
It would appear so, because they basically were paying Hillary Clinton $250,000 for speeches.
For a speech,
and everybody assumed that meant that she would have, you know, connections with them which would mean that once she came to power, she would fill the ranks with Goldman Sachs men. And lo and behold, it's Donald Trump that's come to power instead. But look what's happened.
I don't want to talk about it, man. I'm sick. You're just trying to hurt my feelings. You're kicking a man while he's down now, Bruce.
But no, I was just wondering. So basically, Staggerson, take us on from there. Do you have anything to say on this?
You know, I don't really believe in the Illuminati, but I do think that the people at the top with the money do have power. You know, I mean, money moves things. Money makes the world go round, and once you get sick of getting money, you're gonna go for power. But I was wondering if we'd talk about Kid Rock running for Senate.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. About that at all, or what?
Yeah, start
you two as Brits. What do you guys think of us clowns all the time with our Donald Trumps and our Kid Rocks and our Arnold Schwarzeneggers?
Yes, Mr. Agent, I don't know if you've heard about this, that Kid Rock, who is a kind of aging rock star over there, has now decided to stand, I think, for the Senate. I think
senator from the great state of Michigan, no less.
On top of that, I think the former wrestler, now sort of film star, formerly known as The Rock, is also standing. I think planning to stand for president. So we've got the sort of full showbiz move into politics in America now that we've got Donald Trump, a reality television star, having become president.
What party was he running for?
Is this a nightmare writ large?
What parties are they running for? Kid Rock and The Rock.
Well,
I'm
I don't
sure
know
Kid Rock will be a Republican.
I think that Dwayne Johnson would run Demo, but I'm not sure at this point how serious that is. He's come out and said it's not serious. But we'll see. I'm really wanting to know too. Stag, before we cut them loose, what do you think about it, mate?
You know, I'm open-minded. I'm not going to say that just because the bull god could get up there and ba with the ba the bang a dang diggy 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 said the boogie said up jump the boogie. I'm not going to say that that means the man can't run a Senate seat. You know what I mean? Maybe he's getting old and on in his years, and he's tired of being silly, and he wants to take things a little more seriously. Just because somebody puts on a show doesn't mean that's who they are as a person. But at the same time, it feels like, I don't know, it feels a little odd.
He's lived that life.
Can we hide from the rest of the world while we do this and get this all sorted out?
That's what I'm saying, mate. Because listen, let's say he's the most qualified person that ever lived, Staggy. I mean, how many more of these are going to be imposed on us?
I don't know, man. And how many more can we take?
Oh,
What's next? Katy Perry?
Oh my Lord, have mercy. I can't believe it. Is this a joke? Are you over there laughing up your sleeves at us, Agent?
To be honest, it's like I honestly think the Rock in particular, he was a fantastic interview back in like wrestling days, and like I can see him getting a crowd going. I could see him beating Donald Trump. Like, I mean, in all seriousness. So, if that's where the bar
that's
is,
what's terrifying me. But then now, I mean,
he's better looking.
Can I just ask to clarify? When you say beating Donald Trump, is that in political terms, or is that in a meme?
In the ring.
I mean, well, I mean, in getting people going, in memes, in you know, in the arena that you have to win now. Like
so is that what the political landscape is turning into now? Is it a big show now that we have Twitter and apparently wrestling's a huge part of politics now?
Grammar school lunchroom is what it's coming down to.
Yeah, I mean, it's why the Tories in this country are getting hammered. They don't have much of a meme game, you know. Like there's a few kind of Rees-Mogg fans on Twitter, but like it's not, you know, like Corbyn's got that bit wrapped up, and Trump has won Trump has basically won the internet war. So
who do you all have over there, or who have you had? I
was just about to ask, are you perhaps worried that this might be the way British politics might start going? That we might start recruiting our next batch of politicians from the latest Big Brother show and the staff of Coronation Street?
Oh, you won't reach that low. At least get you a Ewan McGregor or somebody like that. You get A-list. Start at the top.
Well, it kind of makes sense. Like, I mean, we're all forgetting that Ronald Reagan was an actor. Like,
no, we talked about that the other day.
It does make sense on a certain level. I agree.
I just want to know if you see it coming to your country, and if so, how would that make you feel?
Well, you see, I guess I'm someone who has a very dim view of politics and like. I think basically politicians have to appeal to groups in society, and that they're essentially that they basically have, like, if there's a big kind of moral outrage or campaign group, they're duty bound to be seen to do something to respond to that. That's how democracy works. So I guess I'm someone who has a pretty dim view of like politics. I don't think there's no way out of it really. So I mean, I guess all I would want to see is the state to be smaller so that these clowns have less of a chance to wreck everything.
So
well, at least I got some insight there. You did say there were clowns.
That politics is a dishonorable business in which you just sincerely hope that an honorable person might just one day take it up.
That's basically it. But because of the nature of the beast, you could literally put like I don't know, Jesus himself there, and he'd come out tainted by it. You know what I mean? Like there's no way out of. There's no clean way to navigate politics, because it's all about making imperfect decisions, trade-offs, being seen to do the right thing while not actually doing it, while actually doing a harmful thing most of the time. So that's kind of my rather, I guess, cynical and disillusioned take on politics as an arena.
Now, you see, Mr. Ogre, you thought it was only me.
Oh no, I see. Brilliant minds think alike, is what they say, sir. And I tell you, there's only one solution. I've been reading this book, and I see at least one person's ideal of what a great and honorable leader / politician would be, and the only answer to the Kid Rocks, the Donald Trumps, in other words, the famous people already, and the only answer to the Mitt Romneys and the Hillary Clintons is to have true statesmen. And no, I will never bloody say statesperson. To have true statesmen that come in. I believe it was Review the Earth, or who was it? I think it was yesterday, Stag. Somebody was saying we need to have someone that will come in and say, look, I want to be president. I'm going to be president for 4 years. I will not seek re-election. I'm coming in here to do the best job I can do and then get out and let someone else do it. And while I'm here, my number one goal, after keeping the American public safe through the military too, not safe by telling them what to eat, drink, or whatever, but keeping them, my number one goal after that is going to be make government smaller, remove laws from the books. And I don't know, I don't see that day coming anytime soon.
I don't think it will ever. I mean, sorry to butt in, but the reason I don't see it ever coming is because I think that being seen to do something will always look better or have better optics than. Oh
no! By all means, if you're gonna break in, at least hold out a really great bunch of hope for us.
Sorry.
No.
When it comes to this being seen to be doing something, this is what has led us to. I mean, I'm assuming that in America you suffer from exactly the same disease which we've got over here, and that is by now hyperactive government.
Very much.
I think I read once that we introduced sort of a home, a law and order bill from the Home Office once every 50 years or something like that, when we had an empire. Whereas since the war, I think we have been introducing a Home Office bill. So basically, this is days. Law and order, on what grounds to lock people up. We have been doing it on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
And recently, we've actually upped it to a biannual basis.
Oh, my goodness.
So whereas previously it was sort of, once every so many decades that you might have to update things, now it is just basically every 6 months. Here are new reasons to lock people up and ban stuff. And so in that regard, that is kind of the level of hyperactivity we have reached in terms of lawmaking, which in a way follows that terrible, that terrible example that the agent just mentioned of to be seen to be doing something is better than nothing. Because when a government is accused of being tired and it hasn't got any ideas anymore, it is always kind of, the example is always held up in the Queen's speech that there aren't a lot of points in there. They're not doing a lot, which is, of course, exactly what they said about Theresa May this time round, that there isn't a lot in the Queen's speech. Whereas I think many would actually say that was a good thing.
My big problem at the moment is that there isn't a single voice in politics from the left or the right. Obviously not from the left, but especially not from the not from the Trump faction of the GOP, and certainly not from Theresa May. There isn't a single articulate laissez-faire champion anywhere. There isn't a single you have to go to, and where they do exist, like Ron Paul in the GOP, for example, they're marginalized or made to seem like kooks, or so you don't have anybody championing this message that we're talking about Anyway,
I do think that's Staggerson Jagz cue there. You said something about promoting a laissez-faire.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good thing, Stag, that we would have somebody promoting that kind of ideal?
You know, I really do, but I'm certainly more familiar with American politics than I am British politics, but I think they're somewhat similar, especially in the aspect that you have several different parties involved. I mean, like, you have several different people involved in all the decisions that get made. So you could get a president in there that wants to drain the swamp, as it were, and as soon as he gets in there, he's going to get hit with a brick wall. And government is an entity in and of itself, and to get it to try to make itself smaller is like, that sounds like an impossible proposition. You're trying to get a dragon to eat itself.
Yeah.
But could it at least be made to stop making itself bigger?
I mean, we can hope so.
No, I think what he just said plays into that too, because now you're talking about asking this great gray beast of February to eat itself, and even if because when you talk to government that way, Britisher and panel, to them remaining the same size is only marginally worse than asking it to cut itself back. Because what does a government want to do? It seems like they only want to grow. Once you give them power, they very, very rarely want to relinquish it, no matter how small or minuscule or how great and grand that power may be.
And to me, this is the tragedy that we have now. So not only have we seen the death of centrism, but we've also now got to a position where both the major parties in Britain and in America are big state parties. Like, how the hell has that happened? Like, there is no Reagan, Thatcher contingent anymore. I mean, I guess in the GOP you still have what's his name, Paul Ryan, who seems like he's ideologically at least against a bigger state, but like, look at how demonized he is.
Paul Rhino, the Republican in name only. I don't know, man. He seems like he might be just borderline. I think he's a commie. But I mean no disrespect. I got to kind of crack jokes, but when you said about Paul Ryan, I do have to kind of say there, I don't think he's a small government guy. I think he's I really don't want to say much more because I don't have a lot of good things to say about Paul Ryan, but I will say this so we can agree on something, since I threw it out there kind of rudely. Thatcher and Reagan, I mean, I would wish that I could have either one of those people perpetually running this country, because to me those were the two greatest politicians of my life.
But what did it take to bring them to power? So basically, do people like that who actually are interested, who basically set it as their goal, who make it their program to shrink government, do people like that only come to the fore when things really are at their most dire?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's got you have to have a Jimmy Carter in office taxing people 90%. Yeah, you have to. Do
people really have to have their backs to the wall before society can engineer such a solution for itself?
British is funny because I just mentioned something that I've been reading, and without running the risk of saying too much, you know what it takes to have a true hero step forward. You know, and it does take the back against the wall and the edict nailed up all over town, and people, dying basically.
And what's really interesting is that, like, there's a parallel to they had Jimmy Carter, we had the Winter of Discontent, and that brought Thatcher and Reagan. But like, even if you look back to the original laissez-faire, like back in the 19th century, like, it took the Corn Laws and people starving en masse to bring government down in the first place. So it's just an interesting thing.
And listen, look, I'm not going to wear the academic agent out. In fact, I'm going to tell you, I'm using him as an excuse because I'm going to get out of here really quick. This is what I'd like to do, gentlemen. First off, I would like to say, Mr. Agent, when we do get Scott Presler on, I will find out and I'll nail him down, because I just hit him up. When were we talking, British? It was the middle of last week. And he is the vice chair of the Young Republicans in Virginia Beach, Virginia. He's a very busy guy. He was just on Infowars, and I'm sure he's riding high right now, and whatever, for whatever reason. But so I don't go and talk about that for an hour. The next time he's on, I really would like to have you on, because I'll be honest, with the Britisher here, Scott will need someone to have a little backup. And if that backup comes in the form of someone with a wonderful British accent like yourself, maybe Scott will have a little bit better of a chance not to just be torn to shreds and thrown to the vultures. And so when he comes back, that was my really rude and crazy way of saying, when he comes back, man, I really would like to have you on. You'd like the guy, and I didn't realize until I've had you on and been able to talk to you how much you two would click, and I believe that you'd really enjoy him. And that said, look, what I like to do is what I always do. I know it's an abrupt just cut off, but we've been going here for quite a long time, and this has been, I've got to say it, in my mind right now, this is in the top 3 for me. I won't say who the other 2 were, but this is definitely in the top 3 police states that I've been a party to. Agent, you've been a wonderful, wonderful guest. Stag, you're going to be a great addition to the team. But this is what I'm going to do, so I don't just go into a big butt kissing fest. I'd like to ask, starting with Stag, and then going to, or excuse me, starting with our guest, and then going to Stag, TheBritisher, myself. Let's all put a cherry on this. And what I mean by that, anything that was spoken of tonight, anything that you may feel, your last words for the folks that are listening and the folks that will subsequently watch the show in the future. Pardon me?
I don't know whether you just froze for me or for everybody else.
Oh, am I
still? It was just for you.
Okay.
Oh, it was just for me. Okay, yeah, please continue.
All right. Well, that's great, because that's a good way to just cut me off, because I might have rambled on for another 5 minutes. What I'd like to do is, starting with the agent, I'd like for everyone to just take a good 5 minutes and just put a cherry on top of the day. It could be directly tied into something we've been talking about tonight. It might be about your favorite recipe for pumpkin pie. Whatever it may be, let's do that. So take us off, academic agent. Leave us with a good little piece of your mind, sir.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I think that the best solution, I hate to say solutions, but the remedy for some of the things that we've been talking about tonight is only going to come from this sort of thing that we're doing now, like through YouTube, through people power, through making sure the arguments are heard, through getting to young people when they're still young before they can be corrupted by cultural Marxism and all the rest of it. Like we have to do what we can to curb these pernicious cultural forces that people like myself, Britisher, and yourself see in Britain and America and around the world. So that would be my message.
Oh, that was nice, short and sweet. That was so wonderful. Staggy, anything you want to say, brother? Take your time, too. Take as long as you want.
Oh, yeah. You know, I want to say I totally agree with what you just said, Agent, about this is the way this is going to happen. This is how this is going to happen. We're talking to each other. We're raising awareness. I mean, we have the ability to communicate with people all over the world at our fingertips. And I just like to remind everybody constantly that we're doing the best we ever had. We're constantly doing better. You know, these debates and these arguments and these hyperbolic situations in the media are only going to end up making our society stronger in the long run. I think maybe that's something I have a little bit of faith in, but I think that we're doing really good in having these debates and these arguments. It was only going to make us healthier as people. That's pretty much my bit.
Well, thank you so much, Stag. Britt, I know you got something wonderful. Take as long as you'd like, sir.
Well, you know, when it comes to what sort of leadership we want, I think it kind of comes down to two things. That at one moment, yes, we do need the politician who is kind of going to be willing to be honest with us. Basically, you know, if you think back to Winston Churchill, when, you know, he takes over in the Second World War, what has he got to say? You know, I promise you only blood, sweat, and tears.
That's right.
He isn't trying to kind of put it in rose, you know, in rose-tinted colors. He is basically honest enough to say, look, folks, this is going to be hard. You know, we are not taking the easy way. And in a way, what he benefited from at the time was the fact that he had a populace that was actually willing to take that. And in that regard, yes, we can look to the political class and we can say, this is ridiculous. Is this all you've got to offer us? But at the same time, we also have to be the populace who is able to stomach someone who says, this is not all going to be plain sailing. There are going to be problems. Things are going to go wrong. There are going to be things you do not like. And yet, you are going to have to stick with this. We are going to have to see this through together, both the political leadership and the people. And that is where the kind of conundrum lies, that not only have we got a dearth at the moment of any kind of political talent that is out there that could kind of lead us out of the sort of mire we seem to have managed to get ourselves into. But at the same time, we also have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we really deserving of the kind of great statesman who would come along and who would lead us out of this problem? Or are we essentially becoming ever more infantile, demanding only ever the easy option? And, you know, chances are we are becoming the sort of, you know, well, for want of a better expression, the kind of crybaby society whom ever more authoritarian politicians see necessary to mollycoddle. And in that regard, perhaps our societies need to grow up again a little. How that will ever be achieved, I don't know. Chances are it will be through hardship, because that's what seems to have brought it about in the past, that we seem to have taken a turn to choosing the correct option once our backs were against the wall and we didn't really have any other chance, any other option. So in that regard, when I'm complaining about politicians, I do so in the full knowledge that the dearth of those politicians and the fact that proper politicians, proper statesmen, don't seem to have a chance to rise to the top is as much our fault as it is that of the political class. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there.
Well said.
Yeah, I know. I can always count on the Britisher to do something really great at the end of the show, and he did it once again. So I'm just going to say this, Brit, panel. I got some good news. Scott Presler, like him or not, is just an excellent human being. I don't know how else to say it. What he is doing right now as we speak is he's picking up trash on the road. He gets people together in his community, and I believe he's the one that gets it going. You know, he's actually the one that gets people to commit, and they go out with trash bags and they make their community look better. Now, if that's not just a Republican ideal, I don't know what it is, because if we can think back on the Women's March there with all the vagina hats and whatnot, I mean, they left that place looking like a bombed out wasteland. There was trash knee deep in some places, and that's not an exaggeration. And so Mr. Presler's out there doing his part as a young Republican, picking up trash on the side of the road. So his message to me was not personal, so I can share this. I actually sent him this text. I said, it was cool to see you on Infowars with Owen Shriver. You're kind to swing by our little show. It makes us look good. I'll do my best. I'm not going to read that part. And then he answers back, hey, Ogre, I'm still out picking up trash. I won't be able to do 7:30 p.m. Is there another day we can do besides Monday, since this is a day that I go out and do this community service? And of course, I foolishly, because my brain isn't working, put, yes, sir, next Monday, or any day you have at 6 will be great. Thank you so much for all you do. You're a friend of freedom. So that said, look, and then I'll give my wrap up. I'll let you know as soon as possible. And of course, I haven't even asked you, academic agent. So if for whatever reason you decide that we're a bunch of knuckle dragging morons and you never want to speak to any of us again, or you know, whatever reason you have, and you can't make it or want to wait a little bit longer, that'll be fine. But if it's at all possible, I'll keep you informed. And when Scott comes on, look, you'd love this guy. If you enjoyed the crowd tonight, you would really like speaking with this guy. He's one of a kind. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. Listen, folks, constant viewers, people that seem to always come on when the British and I are having a show, whether it's 3 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or if it's the big show here on Mondays, you folks that I'm speaking to right now, you hangers on, you good old lovers of the Brit and Ogre, we can do something. I don't want to sound like a cliche. I don't want to sound like your grandmother or your grandfather, but we can do something. And what is it? We can set an example. Well, how can I be an example to the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Sir Ogre? You have lost your mind. Well, you're right. I've lost my mind, but you can. You may not be able to set an example that they will look at and see, but if we all strive to be that person that we would like to see in office, well, it changes the mood. And yes, you can change the mood of your country by changing your own attitudes, by changing your own way of being, by taking some time to go out in your community and pick up trash along the side of the road. Hey, find out if you have an elderly neighbor in your community. Let's not let the Japanese have the corner on the market on showing respect to their elderly. Go out there, take them lunch, make it with your own hands, make them a good meal, sit down with them, and Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones, would you mind if I sat and ate with you? And you'll find out something. And being that good example and showing that person that you would like others to be, you could also gain wisdom, especially if you're dealing with some of the elderly people in your community. It's such a shame that it's happening more and more often, and our country's always been bad for it here in America. But it's time that we be the change you want to see. That was the cliche I was trying to avoid. Be the change you want to see. It can trickle up. And now, before I just completely wrap it up, I'm going to do something that is going to have the Britisher probably turning red, but I got to say it. Look, folks, take a couple minutes. For y'all listening now, for people that are going to watch this later, take a few minutes, go over and look at the Britisher's channel. If you're already someone that's been watching and listening and learning from the Britisher and enjoy the experience, well, go back and you'll notice on the last video that he did, he's got a new little blue button down there in the notes, and it is connected to a site called Patreon. And I have to say this, Britisher, I have to say it. Go listen to what he tells you. We're not talking about somebody that does what I do here. This is a stress relief for me. There may be times I'm getting some t-shirts together, and yes, I will be auctioning t-shirts off, but to be perfectly honest, that will be to help the Britisher, to help Staggerson Jagz, to help Amanda Wolfchild, and Day is Dead. I personally won't make anything on any of that because of what I'm telling you right now. This is a release for me. It's a relief. And to be perfectly honest with you all, I don't have a lot of time in this. I sit down and I take a little bit of time to write a show agenda. At the most, that might take me an hour to research what we're going to talk about and get it out. Britt, I know you, brother. This is a man that I do believe he gets some enjoyment out of this, but I also know that he takes a lot of time, folks, to be the change he wants to see, to provide you with a service that you're not going to get from the BBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, or yes, even Fox News. He's going to give you, from what I can see, and go be a judge for yourself. He's going to give you a non-biased look at what's going on in the world. And listen, people, this is where I'm going to wrap it up. If you enjoy that, hey, look, give the man 50 quid, give him $100, whatever you can do, just tell yourself whatever you can do. Give him $25 a month, whatever it is. So instead of sounding like a televangelist all night, I'm going to leave it at that. You can surely go find there. And I have to say his spiel at the end of this last week was much more eloquent. And I would say had more class than probably anything I could ever muster. This is, once again, I just have to say it. Thank you so much, Academic Agent, for coming by. We've had, I'm going to name drop. We had Sargon of Akkad. We've had Razor Fist. We've had Poisoning the Well. We've had these guests. We've had guests that have altogether a couple million viewers. Well, that might be a stretch. Well, we've had people with hundreds of thousands of viewers. You're right up there at the top of the heap, mate. You really seem to have your act together. You know about the world and how it works. And it's also refreshing to me to know that there's other people out there that, and obviously we didn't always agree tonight. We won't always in the future, but people that can agree to disagree and do it in an artful, entertaining, and informative manner, I sure do appreciate it. So look, people, while I'm going off into a delirium right here and going to say that I'm wrapping it up and take another hour and a half of your time, remember this, constant viewer. Be good to your friends. Be good to your family members. Be good to your loved ones. Be quick to say you're sorry. Be even quicker to accept an apology, especially when that thing your friend, family member, or loved one has done seems to be so huge you'll never be able to forget about it. Because constant viewers, Britisher, panel, at a time you think not, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, your life, your cause, your prime minister, and your president will depart from you. oh, I'm sorry. It hurts too much to laugh. Hey, if you know Day is dead, send her a little tweet. Tell her you hope she's feeling good. And for goodness sake, be nice to her. See y'all next time.